6 o'clock straight up. Let's do this. Busy Monday morning. Busy show. Let's get to our headlines first. I don't know if you saw this, Slick. I don't know if anybody paid any attention to this yesterday, but the Seahawks played yesterday. I don't know if anybody watched.
I think some people probably saw.
Maybe, possibly. They lost 17-9 in Green Bay. I think we may have to spend, a couple minutes today discussing that out of the 4 hours.
It may come up.
I think we might have 2 or 3 minutes we can address some of the things that happened in the Seahawks game yesterday. We will do that. An MRI on Cardinals running back David Johnson will determine if he will miss a few weeks or 8+ weeks with a sprained wrist. The number one fantasy selection in probably 3/4 of all drafts this year?
Either him or Le'Veon Bell.
Woo-wee. That is the crapshoot with running backs, man. Never know how long they're going to be out there. Mariners hope Felix and Paxton will each make 4 starts apiece before the end of the season. Mariners with a good but not great weekend. Could have been great. Could have very easily been great, as they were winners on Friday, winners on Saturday, and winning on Sunday. Until your boy and my boy, Slickhawk, Nick Vincent, appeared. And Nick Vincent decided to just throw gasoline on a fire, and the Mariners lose yesterday. Michael Bennett's attorney has called for an independent investigation of the Las Vegas Police Department regarding his treatment. Hawks cut Cyril Grayson and signed Kenny Lawler to the practice squad this weekend. Bears will miss wide receiver Kevin White for the season with a broken collarbone. Steelers defensive end Stephon Tuitt on Saturday signed a $61 million deal, and then on Sunday was potentially lost for the season with a bicep injury. They will find out more today when they do an MRI. Jags lose Allen Robinson to a knee injury, not sure how long. Dogs move up to 6th in the latest AP poll. Oklahoma moves up to number 2 after their high-profile win over OSU in the Horseshoe. And in baseball, Brewers have lost their starting pitcher, Jimmy Nelson, for the rest of the season with a rotator cuff strain. The Dodgers have become the first team in Major League Baseball history to go 15-1 during a stretch of a season, and now 1-15 during a stretch of the same season. Indians having no such problem. They won their 18th straight game, beating Baltimore yesterday. Let's do this.
Live from the Carter Volkswagen Studios, KJR AM and KJR FM HD2 Seattle, an iHeart radio station.
Well, now that we got you all caught up, we can just go home, right, Slick? We've informed everybody of what happened over the weekend.
Yeah.
Our work is done here.
Okay.
Our work. I know you've had kind of a rough weekend, right?
Well,
how you feeling?
Got this whole thing in my throat.
What's in your throat?
I don't know whatever. It's
like
just,
an alien?
No, it's just
a worm.
A thing going on.
A thing going on.
Yeah.
So should I not address you today? Should I just let you be an off-the-air member of the show?
No,
today?
we have a radio show to do.
We do have a radio show to do. Well, I'll just use you in the first hour. How about that?
Okay.
And then we'll kind of let you rest after that, because we got a guy named Millen coming in at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
For the Monday morning quarterback. We can let him do most of the talking, and he enjoys doing most of the talking, and he's good at doing most of the talking.
Yeah.
And this is when we want him in doing most of the talking, is after what we saw yesterday. Greg Bell's going to join us at 6:30. Normally he joins us at 7, but he is in the air right now. He is scheduled to land in Denver. Does he not know he lives in Seattle? He's going to Denver right now on his way to Seattle. I guess there's no round trip, non-stop fares to Green Bay, Wisconsin. So he'll be landing in Denver here in 10 minutes or so, and in 25 minutes we'll have Greg Bell on the air and find out what he learned in the locker room last night, what his conversations were like. We'll get his take on the game. Montage will push back to 6:45 to allow Greg to come on at our normal montage time of 6:30. The Monday morning quarterback at 7 o'clock, Hugh Breedlove Millen, will join us for 3 hours from 7 to 10 to break it down, man. Break it down from soup to nuts. We will open up the texting lines as well. The texting lines will be open up all day. If you got some questions for Hugh, I'm sure there There are things after that game yesterday or during that game that were popping into your mind that may be different than were popping into my mind, so you can text us all day long at 49451. Ask Hugh, and we will throw some questions his way. Ian Furness will join us at 8 o'clock today. He was in the locker room as well. We'll get his take on what he saw yesterday in Green Bay, what he heard in the locker room yesterday. Fact or fiction, we have our first $1,000 prize winner, Slickhawk.
Yeah, and it's going to happen every week. Same time, same day.
So we have to make a pick today for this next week, but we also have to award our $1,000 prize winner. Are we going to try to get them on? Is that the plan? We're
Yes.
going to try to reach them?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to try to reach them at 8:30 today and get them on. And then Mike Holmgren will join us at 9 o'clock today. There is your show. It should be a fun one, even though we have to talk about a Seahawk loss. I don't think we're going to have to, despite all the panic surrounding the offensive line, and yes, it's reasonable panic, I understand. You're not going to be playing in Lambeau Field every day. You're not going to be playing against that defensive line every day, which got not nearly enough credit going into the game as what it deserved. Mike Daniels, Nick Perry, nasty players. And we did not talk nearly enough about the Packers' defensive line. We kind of just assumed the Packers would have an advantage at the line of scrimmage, but we didn't know what type of advantage at the line of scrimmage. We knew the Seahawks would have an advantage at the line of scrimmage on defense versus the Packers' offense, and they did, without question. That's why I don't understand why people, including my friend Slickhawk, thought it was going to be a shootout, because when you have the advantage at both lines, when the defense has the advantage at both lines of scrimmage, points are going to be hard to come by, and points were even harder to come by than I thought they were going to be hard to come by. But it was like the field was tilted uphill every time the offense for either team got the ball. But from the standpoint, and the Seahawks lost the game, so you got to look at that side of the ball first. And as Lorenzo Romar said to us many times before, our old friend Lorenzo Romar, if you got 5 doors in your house and you lock 4 of them and only one is left unlocked, you're going to get robbed. And the Seahawks, on every single play, it seemed, left at least one door unlocked. On almost every single play, it seemed like one door was left unlocked. Now, who do you get mad at? Do you point the finger at the Glowinskis of the world and the Jokels of the world and the Odiambos of the world? Or do you get mad at the people that are making the decisions, that are allowing Odiambo to start in that game, that are allowing Luke Jokel to make $7.5 million this year guaranteed? I mean, that's the question. And I think it's a pretty easy answer. For the most part, these are bargain basement pieces on this offensive line, or they should be in Jokel's case. He's not being paid like a bargain basement offensive lineman, but he is one. They're mid-round picks for the most part. Where you can get mad is at the organization. And it's not like this is hindsight, because we've been talking about it for months and years. So this isn't just us showing up on a Monday morning after a disaster and saying, boy, they really should have spent more money on that offensive line. They should have spent more resources on that offensive line. No. We've beaten that drum for years. And nobody really listens over there. Nobody really listens. Keep in mind what their 2017 draft was. For a team whose absolute number one priority was an offensive lineman. Offensive linemen, plural. Here are their first 8 picks in the 2017 draft. Defensive tackle. Center/guard, Ethan Posick. Cornerback. Safety, defensive tackle, wide receiver, safety. 8 picks. Their top 8 picks in the draft. They traded down again instead of taking an offensive lineman in the first round. 8 picks, Slickhawk. 1 offensive lineman. And he's not good enough to start on this team right now in opening week, according to them. That, to me, is the most frustrating part of what we're seeing, is that they had the opportunity to address the offensive line, to really address the offensive line. And they chose, and they can't tell us that they didn't, because I just gave you the proof. They chose not to address it.
I don't think that's necessarily so much the problem, is not necessarily taking steps to address the offensive line. They've just taken the wrong steps nearly at every turn when they do address the offensive line. You know, they went into it not wanting to get younger. They wanted more experience with any guys that they were going to bring in. So that's why they went after Jokel, and that's why they went after TJ Lang. Because they came out and said, you know, we tried to go too young last year. So the last thing I thought they were going to do was add, you know, a rookie to the starting mix. But
a first-round draft pick rookie would not be better than what you have over there right now?
Well, I'm just saying, I didn't think that's what they were going to do. Now, they also thought they had George Fant, who was going to play left tackle for them.
Who was just as bad last year as Reese Odiombo was yesterday, by the way. And anybody that thinks that George Fant was going to turn into a above average to good offensive lineman in year 2 of his football career, not his NFL career, his football career, I think is smoking something.
Well, I'm far more concerned about Luke Jokel and what that is at left guard, and that's just, it's bad. And we saw it yesterday time and time again. I mean, Russell had no time. You had 0 running lanes for most of the game. And I don't know what they could have done. I mean, could they have drafted Cam Robinson? Yeah. What's his draft profile? I don't know. There's another offensive lineman that they were rumored to have possibly been interested in the first round or two. I think he's out for the year. So I don't know what they would have done if they decided, okay, we are going to add a young guy. I know that wasn't what they wanted to do, but I think their entire philosophy surrounding the offensive line for years has been incredibly flawed. I think that their talent evaluation of the offensive linemen they do bring in has been incredibly flawed, and I think that their insistence on relying on Tom Cable and thinking that he is a guru or a god of offensive linemen or whatever they think he is, I think that has been incredibly misguided, and that's a mistake, and that's been flawed. So all of these issues in the offensive line, and over there, they've had these blinders on. They don't want to see what the issue is. You have to be able to admit you have a problem. It's just like any other thing. You have to admit you have a problem before you can address it.
Step number 1, right?
And they have refused to admit that they look at the offensive line in a way that is a detriment to this team.
I think you've rightfully so hammered on Tom Cable for years now. I think you've been the strongest person on the morning show in hammering Tom Cable. And, you know, I was willing to give a little bit more patience and to kind of see it through. And, boy, you appear like you were on the money. Because, yes, there has been a lack of talent, but there's also been just a lack of development. And that is killing this team. Now, this is one game. It's one game that I called a gravy game last week, and I am not panicking in the sense that, do I think this team, like some on Twitter, that I really should start taking money from, like I've done in the past. I mean, I've literally made money for charities in the past, taking advantage on people on Twitter when the Seahawks start slow in a season and make the big bad bold claims that they're going 7-9, like I saw yesterday after the game. And I've made, I'm like, help furnish my church with people's, bold predictions, where basically I just responded, okay, would you like to If you're so sure they're going to go 7-9, would you like to place money on it? I don't think I've ever lost one of those bets. I don't think I've ever lost one of those, hey, I'll give you 8-8 or less and I get 9-7 or more. And I'm not going to lose one of those bets this year either. This team ain't going 7-9. They're not going 8-8 unless you're telling me that Russell Wilson's only going to play 7 games this year. It's not going to happen. They played at Lambeau Field. They led at halftime. They should have led 10-0 at halftime. They got no help from the officials at all on 2 plays. One was a touchdown, and one would have given you the ball at the 1-yard line. So this game, despite the horrible offensive line play, as bad as we've seen, and we've seen bad in the last few years from the Seahawks offensive line, you still very, very easily could have won that game at Lambeau Field, despite being outgained and outplayed. I get it. They were outplayed. But there's 14 points right there. I guess it would have been 10, because you'd have had the 7 from the 11. You would have had 7 from the Nas Jones interception, and you would have had 4 more instead of the 3 they got on the Jimmy Graham, what should have been pass interference. They're still going to win double-digit games, folks. I mean, let's not forget how the rest of the team looked, particularly the guys that play on the other side of the ball, who were even better than advertised, Slickhawk. I mean, I thought, I heard all this talk about this could be the best Seahawks defense ever. Bringing in Sheldon Richardson could put them over the top. It could give them that defensive rotation that they had in 2013 and 2014. And while I hope that everybody was right, I didn't really know enough about Sheldon Richardson to know with my eyes, okay, he's going to be one, as good a defensive lineman as we have on this team. But I kept a very close eye on 91 yesterday, and I was incredibly impressed. I kept an eye on 29 yesterday, and the dude looks like he's got rockets strapped to his back. And we remember what we lost last year without him. That defense is going to win you plenty of games. You're not going to have powerful defensive lines all the time that you're playing with. You're going to be able to move the ball this year. And overall, they're going to be fine. The question is fine good enough?
Well, I don't need Sheldon Richardson nearly as much as I need a left guard. I'll tell you that. It'd be nice to have one of those. But in terms of yesterday, like, you call it a gravy game, and I don't look at it that way at all. I look at it as a game that the Seahawks played, that they could have won, and that they should have won. The only touchdowns they gave yesterday was such an infuriating game. The only touchdowns they gave up were off of a Russell Wilson turnover. One of the many times, look, he could have had 6 turnovers yesterday if it wasn't playing as well as he was, just to stay alive and not fumble, not throw interceptions with adversity and 300-pound men in his face. So you have the turnover that leads to points. You have the boneheaded. You know what Aaron Rodgers does with the quick counts when you try to substitute. Yep. And so you have a guy jogging off the field, and you give up another touchdown on a free play. And those are the touchdowns.
Those are the 2 touchdowns.
That's it.
A 12-man on the field because he makes a quick snap, throw over the top to Jordy Nelson, and a fumble recovery at the 3 that they punch in. I mean, you're right. And had that fumble recovery, Slick, been on the 9 instead of the 3, they probably would have only given up 3 points.
Yeah,
that's how good their defense
and
is
it's
playing.
true. And then you have, you start off the game as well as you can with a pick 6 from your late drafted rookie defensive tackle. He intercepts Aaron Rodgers, runs it all the way back, and you have 2 of the stupidest penalties I've ever seen negate that run back. And you got a chance to completely swing momentum in your favor and have a 7-0 lead and get in the head of Aaron Rodgers, all those things, and you completely screw yourselves over. It was a poorly played game from top to bottom. It was mentally, it was an F. This team was checked out.
No, the defense was not checked out.
I'm talking about mentally. I'm talking about mentally.
I think the defense was checked out
mentally.
mentally?
They played hard. Obviously, they were checked out mentally. You've got Jeremy Lane, shoving who has always been a hothead. Jeremy Lane has always been the guy who's going to take things too far.
So you thought Jeremy Lane deserved to get kicked out?
I don't know. I don't think he deserved to get kicked out. He certainly did enough to get a penalty and to get a touchdown.
I'm not even sure he did enough to get a penalty.
He took his forearm and shoved it in the throat of a Green Bay Packer. Man. He shoved his forearm into his throat. That's a penalty. Anytime, anywhere, that's a penalty.
Does Devontae Adams deserve a penalty on that play?
I'm sure he does. They always catch us. So what?
That's
what I'm saying.
I don't even know if I saw.
You have to play smarter.
I'm not sure I even saw a penalty from Jeremy Lane, let alone an ejection.
He had him on the ground. He shoved his forearm into his throat, right into his Adam's apple. That's a penalty. Cliff Averill.
We'll see if the texters agree with you.
Cliff Averill going and shoving Aaron Rodgers. Should that have been a penalty? Probably not.
That was dumb.
Should it have been done?
I'll give you on that one. That was dumb.
I mean, come on.
Nas Jones was 4 yards in front of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers wasn't catching Nas Jones.
So, yeah, this team had opportunities to win this game, and mentally they screwed the pooch.
Let's remember what has happened in openers for the Seattle Seahawks over the last few years. Let's go back to 2011. They scored 6 points in a loss at Arizona. In 2013, when they won the Super Bowl, they scored 12 points in a 12-7 win that was very, very much akin to what we saw yesterday. Offensive line disaster, Russell getting killed. They barely find a way to win like they could have found a way to win yesterday in Green Bay, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl that year. Last year, remember the Miami game? They won 12-10 at home over a okay Miami team. Openers have been a problem for this team. They always start slow. I just gave you 4 of the last 6 openers where they have scored 6, 12, 12, and 9 points. 6, 12, 12, and 9 points in 4 of the last 6 openers. That's not going to continue. It's easy to put the blinders on to the rest of the season and look at your team right now based on what you saw the last 60 minutes and say, this is exactly what our team is. This is exactly what our team's going to be the rest of the year. It's easy to do that, but it's also inaccurate to do that. 6:23 on 950 KJR. Big show coming. Montage in the next segment. Lots going on in the world of sports, the world of football. We'll get to that next. Monday morning quarterback will be at 7 right after Greg Bell. Greg Bell's next. Then the montage. I screwed myself up. Greg Bell next at 6:30. The morning montage at 6:45. Monday morning quarterback at 7 with Hugh Breedlove Millen. Your chance to ask Hugh some questions on the texting line. You can throw them out at us at 49451. I'll save a bunch and get it to him. Ian Furness at 8 o'clock. Fact or Fiction. We'll name our first $1,000 winner at 8:30. And Mike Holmgren in studio from 9 to 10 right here on AM. Subaru Volkswagen brings you Seahawks at 7 with Greg Bell. Except it's Seahawks at 6:30 today.
A little early.
But technically where Greg Bell is, he is in the 7 o'clock hour.
Yeah, they're mountain over there.
I believe he's in...
So is he early or is he late?
Denver, Colorado. Are you confused, Greg? The game was in Green Bay.
Am I confused? That's a really good question on 1 hour of sleep. Yeah, I am.
So you're heading back home from Green Bay through Denver, huh?
Yeah. The direct route. But, yeah, it was a long night. Green Bay is, of course, the toughest city in the NFL to get to and from.
Right.
Got to drive an hour and a half or 3 hours, no matter where you're flying out of.
Well, Slickhawk and I were engaged in a discussion in the last segment, and it kind of spilled over to the break, and that was the investment that the Seattle Seahawks have made on their offensive line. And I simply brought up a point. I said, when your weakest spot by far is your offensive line, and then I named the first 8 picks of the Seattle Seahawks draft that reads defensive tackle, center, cornerback, safety, defensive tackle, wide receiver, safety, and safety. I'm like, you kind of get what you invest in. And, Slickhawk says, well, they're trying not to rely on young guys. That's why they didn't draft offensive line. What do you think about their investment or lack thereof that they've made in the offensive line, both this offseason and over the last 5 years?
Well, first of all, I'm not prepared for this because I had no idea you would ask me about the offensive line. It's completely out of the blue.
Because they were so good yesterday. You thought I'd go somewhere else, right?
I'm just shocked. Philosophically, here's what they think. They believe college offensive linemen in college football today are not ready to play in the NFL by and large. And so they don't want to waste a lot of their draft capital on it, certainly not in bulk. They think that they're just as good as getting the Jordan Rooses of the world, undrafted free agents, for less cost and not use draft capital on offensive linemen. Now, there are a lot of teams who don't agree with them on that, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that, there's a huge, huge transition point in college football with linemen who don't even get their hand on the ground for 4 years anymore. That's one thing. The second thing philosophically is they've decided with Justin Britt being the only exception since Carolyn Schneider got here, they've decided not to spend money in free agency on their own in re-upping their offensive linemen they've developed. And if they ever have gone outside to get free agents from other teams, they've been on the cheap for 1 year, prove-it, low-risk deals. Luke Jokel, for instance, Odea Bushi. So that's where they are philosophically. They do that so they can then pay Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor and Doug Baldwin and Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner and Richard Sherman to have that core stay together through their 20s until they're about 30 years old. They have to skimp somewhere. Mm-hmm. And they got away with skimping on the offensive line when Russell Wilson was healthy enough and the offense dynamic enough to cover for those mistakes. Wilson would just run away from the pressure, make some crazy sandlot plays. We saw it in years that they went to the Super Bowls. It was the same way. And they got away with it. Well, last year he got hurt. He got hurt to the point he couldn't get away with it anymore. The offense plummeted in rushing from 5th to 25th. And now they're in a situation where even though Russell Wilson is healthy, the rushing game is still weak because the offensive line can't even block enough to give running backs holes to run. So it's a little bit of chicken and the egg, which came first. It's also a little bit of it's going to take a few years, not just one or half a season, a few years to break what they philosophically were doing for the 4 or 5 or 6 years before.
Well, you put up some numbers on Twitter last night that were really kind of scary. I mean, 1/4 of their last 16 regular season games, there have been fewer than 10 points scored by the Seahawks offense. They've got games where their D has allowed 17, 9, 6, and 14 since week 2 of last year, and they're 0-3-1 in those games. I mean, that is defense doing above and beyond the call of duty what it takes to win. And I think a lot of Seahawks fans, maybe even including myself, have kind of been blinded to the fact that, okay, maybe this is an offensive problem, period, and not just an offensive line problem. Because as you mentioned, there's other portions of that offense, i.e. running back, i.e. lack of production at the tight end, i.e. wide receiver, that's not doing it either.
Well, it tends to look like that across the board on offense. Jimmy Graham had a very poor day yesterday. I mean, Russell Wilson overthrew Tyler Lockett in the first quarter when he did have a second after scrambling to find him open. He was open by 5 yards. Yep. Would have been a touchdown, and he overthrew him. So the margin of error, the plays, the opportunities to make big plays are so limited because of the line situation that when they come, it's almost like they have to convert on them. This was like this last year, too. They can't get away with, okay, well, Wilson overthrew Lockett. Well, he'll get another opportunity here in the next couple of plays.
Yeah, he
might not get another opportunity till week 3, right? So and we didn't notice that before when they were making more consistent plays and at least getting the opportunity to make those plays. Now we're not seeing the opportunity to make those plays at all. Let's not also discount that number 24 isn't in the backfield for the running game anymore. And it's one of those things where you appreciate him the most when he's gone. He made a lot of holes look bigger than they were, and he made a lot of rushing yards that weren't really there for most running backs. Marshawn Lynch blowing through guys that weren't blocked. So now you got Eddie Lacy, who didn't run through anybody yesterday and only got 7 snaps. You got rookie Chris Carson getting 26 snaps, but he had to play yesterday so much because they needed him to pass block and pass receive. Another thing I noticed yesterday, guys, and I brought this up during the game a little bit, the pass protection issues have a trickle-down effect in that yesterday they had to keep Graham and Luke Wilson sometimes in the same plays, Graham, Trey Madden, C.J. Procise even in the pass block a couple times, and Chris Carson. So now you only have 3, maybe 4 at the most receivers downfield, and Green Bay's got 6 or 7 coverage guys. And you don't have to be very good on defense to cover 7. Use 7 guys to cover 4.
Right.
And that's a lot of times what happened with Russell Wilson when he did get some time because of the added protection packages they brought in tight ends and running backs, the chips. He didn't have anyone to throw to because 7 Packers were guarding 4 Seahawks. So then the other flip side was, okay, let's run more guys out in the pattern. As soon as they went to just 5 offensive linemen, the defensive front for Green Bay overwhelmed them.
I haven't seen Russell that down maybe ever. And, they select, obviously, the times that they're going to show him on the sidelines. But, he kind of had a vacant look. He looked really depressed. And normally, he's got those upbeat eyes, and he's clapping his hands saying, all right, let's go. We'll be all right. We'll be all right. He looked deflated on the sidelines. They showed him 4 or 5 times during the game when the defense was on the field. What was he like? What was the rest of the team like, the vibe in the locker room after that one?
Well, first of all, Wilson got hit hard a few times, as he often does when he doesn't get any protection, and that'll take the spark out of any guy. In the locker room, though, it struck me, because I was looking for it, that there's absolutely no panic, and it's very businesslike, and there's 15 more of these to go, at least. And we talked about this last week, Dick. If this team lost this game, which they weren't favored to win, all the Pacific Northwest would be doom and gloom. And I can't believe the ire on social media during the games. It's like this team of the 0-16 Lions from a few years ago. That they really aren't that bad. I mean, they look bad yesterday, but they are not an absolutely putrid, awful team that everyone should just rip it up and burn the whole thing to the ground and start over. It's one game, and they didn't play really well, but yet they still were within 1 score of the win, or at least tie, and the defense kept them in the game throughout. And so there was no panic afterwards. The defense especially, Earl Thomas in particular, Cliff Averill, another one saying, we got a championship defense.
Yeah. We
can win a lot of games, maybe the division. They didn't say this specifically, but they meant we're going to go a long way just with our defense alone. And they'll develop, and the team will develop as a whole, and the offense will get there at least to passable levels. I mean, the defense yesterday, guys, played well enough to probably beat 2/3 of the league and teams in the league. And they happened to be on the road at Green Bay against Aaron Rodgers. They weren't going to beat that team on that day playing like that. So I caution everybody there in the Northwest to keep rooting for your team, because they're not exactly going to fold it up or burn it down to the ground. They're not as far off as they looked yesterday.
I say this every year, Greg, as we let you go. This is the day, and it happened last year when they beat Miami 12-10 and then lost to the Rams 9-3, or 2 years ago when they were 2-4 to start the season. I say it every single year. Take advantage of your negative Nelly coworkers when you get to work, when they start spouting off how bad the Seahawks are and, oh, my God, they're going to go 8-8. This is when you make your money, Greg. This is when you say, hey, all right, I'll give you 8-8 or under. I'll take 9-7 or over, and we'll put a C note on it. This is where you make your money, Greg. You take advantage of those people that are depressed today.
Wake up in Seattle, look at your Space Needle, appreciate the green, and thank your lucky stars you're not in Cleveland.
There you go. Amen, brother. Hey, have a safe trip back. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.
You bet. Greg Bell joining us from the airport in Denver, making his way back from the Green Bay locker room yesterday. Make your money on your coworkers, folks. There's nothing wrong with that. 6:41. Morning Montage is next. From the Carter Volkswagen studio, just ahead of the Monday morning quarterback with Hugh Breedlove Millen, which will begin in earnest at 7 o'clock. Let's start with Lambeau Field yesterday in our morning montage.
Trying to get him with 12 men on the field, and they may have into the end zone. Touchdown! Jordy Nelson. Flags are down, but the Packers hurried it up, and Jordy Nelson finds the end zone.
I have seen it. I didn't see the punch at all, and I'm disappointed that the play would have such magnitude on the game. You know, you guys have seen more of it than I have. I just saw a little thing on the telephone here after the game. It's just such a drastic thing to do that I wish that they would have had cooperation from more than one official and just talk about it and figure it out. And because it's such a big call, I'm not talking about even bringing the touchdown back. I'm talking about ejecting the guy. But that's what they saw. One guy saw it, and that's what they went with. And I'm anxious to hear how the league talks. Tells us how that went. What should happen there.
Yeah, I have to go watch the film, honestly, guys. I just kind of watch it and study it a little bit more and see what it was. I felt super clear out there. I think the rest of our guys did too. We'll have to figure out, what we need to do to get a little bit better. It's really that simple. It wasn't like we were far off or anything like that. One or two plays, one, two, three plays there, here and there, would have had a chance.
Well, he's right about that. A couple plays in the right spots, and that's a completely different game. The touchdown pass to Jordy Nelson comes because the Seahawks defense is ill-prepared when the 12th man is running off the field. Otherwise, there's no way Jordy Nelson gets that open because he hadn't been that open all day long. And, the Jeremy Lane situation, I'm trying to remember a time when not only the announcers in the booth, the Joe Bucks and the Aikmans, but also the Michael Strahans and the Jimmy Johnsons and the Howie Longs. I mean, every single one of those guys to a man was like, wow, that was a terrible call. Usually you get, especially from the network guys, from the national guys in the New York studios, you normally get I can kind of see they try to defend the referees a little bit. The referees got thrown under the bus during that game.
Well, especially since Mike Pryor is the former head of officiating, I think he does kind of lean that way a little bit. It did, obviously bad, but there was a little bit of silver lining coming out of yesterday's game, and I think that was the play of Shaq Griffin. I thought he looked very good.
There's no question, and we're going to talk about
this. He was thrown right into it with Jeremy Lane leaving, and I think he took everything that was thrust upon his shoulders, and I think he played, all things considered, I think he played very well.
And to your point, in the long run, let's say you were going to lose the game anyway.
Ugh.
Okay, let's say you were going to lose the game even if Jeremy Lane hadn't been kicked out of the game. You got a bonus by Shaq Griffin being thrust into the fire for 4 quarters against those receivers and that quarterback. And I totally agree with you. He conducted himself more than admirably yesterday. The Huskies were more than admirable on Saturday.
Punt away, high, spiraling boot. Pettis, no fair catch, makes the reception. Angling out to the near side, 35-40, has the sideline in midfield, cutting back. Pettis at the 40 of Montana, 30, has one man to beat as he crosses to the far side, 20-yard line, broke a tackle there, down the sideline, into the end zone. Are you kidding me? Touchdown, Washington, Dante Pettis.
The Huskies' punt return game is an absolute work of art. I mean, you watch that. I've watched that play develop because in my mind, normally when you see punts, you're like, you're just like, okay, it's a punt. You expect either a fair catch, or you expect like a 5-yard return. Well, not when somebody's punting to Dante Pettis and their punter is standing inside their own 20-yard line. Anytime that happens, I'm like, I'm really watching this carefully. So I'm at the game. I watch that ball in the air. I watch where he catches it. I watch the blockers set up his lanes, and I watch how he follows his lanes. Absolute work of art as Dante Pettis gets his 7th punt return touchdown of his career, breaking Deshaun Jackson's Pac-12 or Pac-10 record, as the case may have been when Deshaun Jackson was there, breaking his record. Thanks to Bob Rondo, IMG, and the Huskies for that call. Let's hit the NFL. Deshaun Watson comes into the game very early for Houston.
Quarterback change.
Deshaun Watson is going to come into this game. The rookie from Clemson gets a big ovation. And maybe Watson can do some things with his legs to get away from that fierce Jacksonville pass rush. We'll see.
They still didn't win.
You're right about Bill O'Brien, Slickhawk. You've been on the Bill O'Brien sucks kick for a long time.
So bad.
He's terrible.
He's never made like just a decision where I was like, you know what? Solid decision. Good decision.
So
I agree with that.
So, Bill, you're going to spend 5 weeks preparing Tom Savage to be your starting quarterback.
Tom Savage.
And then you're going to pull him in, was it the first quarter or the second quarter?
They pulled him at halftime.
Was it a halftime? So you're going to prepare this guy, and you got this rookie who you really like, right? Well, you're going to give him 25% of the snaps in practice for 5 weeks. But then you're going to make him your starter at halftime of week 1.
Yeah.
Bright.
I mean,
that's really bright.
That's about par for the course for Bill O'Brien.
Derek Carr finds Amari Cooper.
First and goal, shotgun. Derek looking right, throwing, catch. Amari Cooper tackled by the USC rookie Adoree Jackson. Spun out of that. Did he hit the ground? He fights for the end zone. Apparently, Amari was spun down on another player.
Calling touchdown.
And they're saying touchdown Raiders.
I'm my man Beast. I see you, Beast.
I was available for 3 minutes. They didn't have that. I'm good, right? You're good.
By the way, Marshawn ran real well today. How many carries is he going to get? Well, maybe about 18. He had a good performance, so happy about that as well.
I saw very, very little of that game. But I did see Marshawn's first carry.
Yeah, how'd that look?
And it was funny because my son's sitting there, and he was just on the couch. I was like, hey, Dixon, look. Who's that in the backfield? He was like, I go, that's beast mode. I go, you want to see him carry the ball? Because he kind of felt he was going to get the ball on that next play.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah. And he's pinballing off of guys and stiff-arming guys and spinning and getting like 9 yards. And he goes, yep, that was beast mode. Look, there's only one guy that runs like that. Now, again, I'm skeptical. We'll see if he's able to do it for 16 games, but he was able to do it for 1 yesterday. Cooper Kupp, Eastern Washington Eagle with a
Robert
touchdown.
Woods motions from left to right to Jordan. Gurley's in the backfield on 3rd down and 6 officially from the Colts 18. Shotgun snap back to Goff. He's got a pocket. He's got time. He drills one to the end zone. In the hearts. Cooper Kupp. Touchdown, LA!
Cam Newton and the Panthers beat up the hapless 49ers, our opponent next week.
First and goal, Carolina at the Niner 9. Ball's at the right hash. Stewart and McCaffrey in the backfield. Newton checks it down to Stewart, to the 10, to the 5. Leaps right side, touchdown.
Now, did Niner Nate really bet you that the Niners would score 17 points or more?
Yes.
You should have gotten $1 a point, with 17 being the fulcrum.
Yeah, was that this week or for the Seahawks game they were going to score?
I thought it was this week.
No, I think it was the Seahawks game they were going to score 17. So I can still make that wager, Slickhawk.
Yeah.
And I think that's a hell of an idea.
Get $1 a point.
$1, 17's the midpoint.
Yeah.
I get $1 for every point under 17 that the 49ers score. He gets $1 for every point over 17.
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic idea, and that bet will be made in the next break. Speaking of the next break, after Bruce Arians, we'll take one. Here's Bruce Arians.
DJ Johnson has a wrist. We'll find out the severity of that. It happened on the fumble.
Yeah, bad day for the Cardinals. You think it was a bad day for the Seahawks? No. That wasn't a bad day for the Seahawks. That was just a loss at Lambeau Field in a game that you could have won.
It was a bad day.
It was a bad day for the Cardinals. They get blasted and lose their best player for at least a month, maybe more than 2 months.
Ugh.
Yikes. Hugh Braidlove Millen to break it all down for us, the Monday morning quarterback right around the corner. Welcome, Hugh.
Morning, Dick.
It's always funny to see how different people react to Seahawk losses. And, poor Slickhawk in there. I know he's not feeling well, but, the guy looks like somebody just ran over his cat. And he's just not in a good mood. I don't even know.
I don't even like cats.
That's kind of a shot right there.
And he takes these pretty hard, and I look at the more big picture. It's a 16 game regular season. It's playoffs.
Depends on how it happens, though. And then when you have a game like yesterday that was just ripe for the picking, and you just screw it away. I mean, they pissed that game away.
I get it, but you're going to have games like that every single year, no matter what sport.
And I'm going to be pissed off each time.
Well, that's your choice. I'm gonna choose to look on the bright side now. But we will talk about a lot of the things that did not go right in that game, Hugh. But just some of your overall thoughts, and maybe we'll start there. Your overall thoughts on how close was this game, in your opinion, to a Seahawk victory?
Well, it was close just because it was so much of a mutter, through one half. You have the gigantic play down on your own goal line. Turnovers are most impactful the closest they are to the goal line, and in low-scoring games are obviously more impactful. So that breakdown by Jokel and the sack and fumble there on the 3-yard line, that's about as impactful a fumble as you could possibly have when you combine those two factors, right? And so I think not only the tangible aspect where and now all of a sudden you've got a 3-0 lead, and you got Green Bay just feeling totally against the ropes with their offense and what Seattle's defense is doing to them. But now it changes the energy in the stadium. Now they have, of course, a 7-3 lead, and it just seemed like now they're playing with a little bit of confidence, and as dreadful as Seattle's offense was, now it was the burden on the Seahawks offense to get something going offensively. So, I think they were close. Absolutely. I mean, that game, a couple of different plays. Then Seattle comes down and responds. They get down in the red zone. They have a 1st and goal at the 3-yard line, and they get 3 points out of that. And all 3 of those plays, they weren't even close. I mean, they tried to run the ball, and it looked like they were running against 20 Packers off the left side. I mean, the right side of the line, they're running to the left, and the right side of the line is getting killed. You got Galinsky couldn't get to his linebacker. His linebacker is in on the tackle, and Ifedi can't get a cutoff block, so the defensive line just sparks inside there, and he's right there at the point of attack. So there was just massive pursuit on that. So now that leads to 2nd down. Then they try to go play action, and they're going to have a little whip route with Paul Richardson in man coverage, not unlike the touchdown catch that Edelman had in the Super Bowl against the Seahawks. Might have been Amendola, but I think it was Edelman. It was Edelman. Yeah, it was a whip route, a little start the slant, whip back out. So it was a well-conceived idea. 2 bad things happen. Odiombo absolutely whiffs. He's a traffic cone in that situation. Now Russell Wilson, has to hurry up his throw, and meanwhile Paul Richardson slipping. So you don't have any separation. So that play wasn't close. And then you have Russell on a total jailbreak situation with the offensive line, where he just is going flyers up to Jimmy Graham, and Jimmy Graham runs a uninspired route, but then finally Russell puts it in a spot, the absolute perfect spot. I mean, you could have put a basketball hoop out there, and him under duress, falling backwards, he threw it through the basketball hoop. He put it in the exact spot you'd want to get. And the officials, this is one of the things that drives me crazy about damn instant replay. All this effort for instant replay to try and make the game fair, and the officials are just, dead ass blind on the play. That how you don't get a pass interference. I mean, that's like
with 2 guys, not just
dictionary.
one.
I mean, the ball's floating. A lot of times these guys, they miss it. I've been in NFL officials' training rooms for 4 hours. I've listened to Super Bowl officials. I don't want to try and put this into an adjective. I have listened to officials that have been the head referee in Super Bowls, multiple Super Bowls, and I've listened to them train other NFL officials. And they talk about the problem being that the play explodes on you. Well, how is a floated
it took
play,
forever. That ball took forever to get there.
I mean, if your eyes are ever going to be able to process the play, and explode means it just happens so fast that visually, you've got, what they say is you've got to be far enough away from the play that it doesn't explode on you visually. So at any rate, how you can miss that play is beyond me. If that happened in a 9-year-old peewee game on Saturday morning, I would be appalled that they could miss that. I mean, that's just what more.
The defensive back had his face mask
grabbing his
buried
arms.
in the chest of Jimmy Graham. With the ball coming from behind him, had his face mask buried in his chest with his two hands shoving Jimmy Graham's shoulders.
They didn't miss the contact. They thought that it was, they ruled it uncatchable.
Which is
that's terrible.
Ridiculous.
Look at where the ball bounces. Look at where the ball bounces.
I tweeted out a picture of the ball going right behind Jimmy Graham's head.
Look, you could get a what would it be? A physicist. You could get a professor from the University of Washington to calculate the angle of the drop of the ball, the height of Jimmy Graham, Jimmy Graham's location, Jimmy Graham's vertical, where the ball landed, the trajectory. I mean, the whole thing. You tell me that's uncatchable? I'm telling you, you've got an incompetent ref that shouldn't be officiating a game for 9-year-olds. So,
and weren't there like 3 of them?
It's I don't know. It's just appalling that the NFL, and I get back to full-time officials, he's going to have a better chance if he is spending 48 hours a week sitting there and practicing other officials' mistakes, watching the video, that putting virtual reality goggles on, practice making those, practice his eyes processing, and if he's a middle school counselor, hey, God bless him, but it doesn't make him competent enough to be able to make that play. Anyway, I don't. That's the far from my thrust, and I didn't plan to thrust into that. But
this is why we have you on.
Your question to me was, could Seattle have won that game? Absolutely, they could have won that game. And the defense finally gets gassed, but there's a psychology there where they give up 152 yards in the first half, and then ends up being closer. What was it? 350 and change.
I don't know the exact number was. I can take a look.
But given how Seattle had been so inept, just the fact that they were able to allow just the 152 yards at halftime, but, obviously the shutout. I mean, they just had Aaron Rodgers reeling. And so certainly, absolutely, that game was a winnable game, and you changed 2 or 3 plays in that game. The sack that I mentioned in the fumble.
Looked like Russell just dropped that ball. Did somebody strip it? I couldn't tell.
Yeah, stripped
he hit it.
Yeah.
Did he hit it? Okay, I couldn't tell if he got it.
He had 2 hands on it. He hit it and just kind of scored it out.
Well, that cat had. I mean, he looked like Warren Sapp in his prime. I mean, that was
Daniels.
Oh God,
Daniels was a monster.
He was. I mean, he absolutely abused. And the thing about it is they weren't running a bunch of stunts, and I think the disappointing thing for me is a lot of times where Seattle has had breakdowns, we can come in here and we can say, well, there was some blitzes or there was some stunts and there was some, miscommunication. You say, well, if they improve their communication on the offensive line, here's a young offensive line trying to gel and what have you and play with next to one another on each side. A lot of times you come back and you say, well, those are correctable. So there were so many breakdowns yesterday that you just say, wait a minute, that he wasn't confused. He just got his ass physically beat. Mm-hmm. It just lunging, poor technique, but he knew there was no like, okay, are my eyes lazy? Do I need to be, was the will linebacker coming and then all of a sudden, I got out of position because I wasn't sure if I needed to slide. This guy's just going, hey man, it's center cut, no
just mono-y-mono.
Just just poor technique. Their man, too much man against too much boy is a lot of those breakdowns. I mean,
Pete Carroll called it he goes, I was surprised at how much more aggressive they were. I don't know if I've ever heard him use that word. That's a shot. I mean, when you're just basically saying you got outworked, you got out aggressive, if that's even a word. I mean, that's a real indictment.
Yeah, and I'll say, I don't know who's going to break this down or what they're going to say. I'll tell you solidly what my opinion. Jermaine Ifedi, he's not going to have the stat line, the stat line to forget that Odiombo in terms of pressures and sacks and hits and what have you. But Odiombo's technique where he retreats, it's like you're blowing a whistle and saying ready, set, go, and go as fast as you can to Russell Wilson's lap. retreat as fast as you could, like a back pedal, like a corner, like an NFL corner. Back pedal as fast as you can, like an NFL corner, and get right in Russell Wilson's vision and get right in his lap and make him feel like if he throws in your direction, he's going to break his hand on your helmet. Just watching the breakdowns, just one after the next. It's like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Who's going to just be a traffic cone on the next play? And it's just frustrating when it's such a good football team and the offensive line. I mean, poor Russell Wilson, man. I admire the hell out of him. There's times where I've come in here where he's taken sacks, and I've done a show with you.
You've put it on him,
and the Ram game, just conspicuously right off the top. But there's been many, or particularly early in the year, and I'm sitting there going, dude, you're an NFL quarterback. You got to redirect. You got to send the center. You got to have recognition. There's outlets where you should go. You can change the protect. I mean, you saw Aaron Rodgers was changing plays multiple. That's when you have pressures. That's when you're bringing guys from one side or another. The Seahawks weren't confused. They were just beat. Mm-hmm. And you understand the difference?
Absolutely.
And so I'm just sitting there thinking, that poor doggone Russell Wilson, man. I mean, he's sued for insubordination. So I think he's lost a half a step in terms of his elusiveness. I still put him as in the elite category in terms of elusive. I still think he's a tad heavy. So there's some plays that I just feel like he could get out of 5 years ago that he's not quite having that elusiveness, but the
grass maybe makes a difference too. That's a slow track.
Well, and you're not used to the footing. I mean, you
saw a couple of slips. You saw Paul Richardson, as you mentioned, could have been a touchdown. He slips. Grass is. I'm sorry. In NFL, grass to me is very 1965. I mean, NFL football should be played on, in my opinion, these days with these athletes, should be played on field.
Well, I don't agree with you, particularly in the in the southern regions. Those rubber pellets, it's just, as we know, it's just recycled black tire, and it is significantly hotter. I mean, you start putting field turf in Arizona and down in Florida, and I mean, that's going to be a miserable conditions for those guys. It could be as much as 15, 20 degrees hotter on the field turf.
But 1 month out of the year, is it going to be that hot?
You're entitled to your opinion. I'm just saying. No, to me, to go down to Jacksonville or the Miami Dolphins or Tampa Bay and play on field turf would just be like, what? You only play 8 games a year out of there. I mean, in theory.
But you're tearing up that grass. I mean, the grass is going to be by the third quarter, even especially if it's the least bit wet. You're tearing it up, and then the field becomes a decisive part of who wins the football game. And I don't think the conditions should be a decisive factor.
Well, the conditions weren't the. I mean, we had a couple guys slip just because you're not. Well, they practice on grass. I don't. The field was not.
I'm not blaming the game on the field. I'm just.
Well, we saw a couple guys. We talked about Paul Richardson slipping, and Russell Wilson came out on a bootleg, and with nobody around him, he slipped. He's as good an athlete as there is on that field, and
that doesn't happen at CenturyLink Field. Those slips don't happen.
Well,
at CenturyLink Field,
probably not. But I could show you a tape where guys slip. I don't know. To me, I think that Green Bay does a pretty good job with that field, and they've got a extensive heater system. I like the fact that Green Bay has unusual conditions, and in the winter, I don't know. I look at old '60s tape where you can't even read the numbers because their jerseys are so muddied. Okay, in that regard, I would say something's got to change. But for the most part, and the Redskins a couple years ago, they really had a hard time with their field. But at any rate, I think field is far from the issue to talk about today, as you know.
Now, where do we go from here with that line, and what could be done? Let's say this line doesn't get any better, which it will, but let's say it doesn't get any better.
Yeah.
What can the coaching staff, scheme-wise, do? We saw what they tried to do yesterday. They tried to bring a bunch of guys in to help block, and I'm thinking, is that the way to go, or is the way to go completely opposite and send everybody out so you have more targets to throw to instead of you only have 3 targets to throw to against 7 defensive backs.
Yeah, well, I mean that's been going on for years. Okay, you've got in a standard zone you've got 7 guys and you're rushing 4. And whether it's 2 deep or 5 under, 3 deep, 4 under, 4 deep, 3 under, that's standard zone. Now, of course, teams will, not terribly infrequently, they will drop 8, rush 3, and particularly in long yardage situations, whether it's 4 deep, 4 under, whether it's 3 deep, 5 under, or sometimes teams go 2 deep, 6 under in short yardage situations. You saw Seattle do that, where they don't want to play man-to-man, but they don't want to give up the short pass, so they go 2 deep, 6 under. So you'll see different type of blitzes, but the numbers, it's just infuriating to me where, you might as well rent a biplane and hire a sign and just circle around the stadium, our offensive line is trash. If you're going to go 3rd and 12 and you're going to hold a guy who was once a first team all NFL tight end, who you're paying $10 million.
Who can't block a lick and doesn't want to.
Well, we're going to do some talking about Jimmy Graham. And I spent the entire day watching that doggone game over and over
he
and
was
over
hot
again.
trash.
Okay. Jimmy Graham in basically every aspect of being a football player was a disappointment yesterday. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about uninspired routes. I'm talking about telegraphing where his routes are going to go, playing with no speed. If he's going down the middle, he's not setting anything up when he's hooking on the same route concept. I understand what Seattle's trying to do, trying to run him down the middle where they try and isolate him on the Mike backer, split the safeties. He's got to attack that inside and then get in behind him. So he doesn't really use the technique you want when he's going down the middle. And then when they come back and Darrell Bevell calls and say, well, all right, we tried to knife him down the middle before. Now let's let him stop because that Mike backer is going to be running out of there, assuming that he's going down the middle. Now let's do a curl in front of him. Well, now he's just there's no acceleration. His shoulders are coming back. His feet are choppy. He's turning his head too quick, and he's telegraphing to the defender, hey, I ain't going down the middle. I'm about to stop. Mm-hmm. So his route technique, I think, right now,
and he has the biggest drop of the game.
Biggest drop of the game, uninspired blocking. But I think he was such a big part of the blocking scheme and passing plays that he probably,
think he checked himself out?
Far.
You think he checked himself out because he was in blocking so much? He was like, geez, what am I doing?
I don't know. I've played with 10 Pro Bowl receivers and 8 Pro Bowl tight ends. There's no way that I can reasonably just say, okay, I'm in the mind of Jimmy Graham. That would be absurd. Right. I will tell you what was in my mind. I found myself wondering what was in his mind, wondering whether he was going, what the hell am I doing here, making $10 million, and this is how I'm using the scheme. I don't know. It was uninspired. He's got to be better. This is last year in the contract. He won't be a Seattle Seahawk with this type of impact and what he put on tape yesterday. So, but to keep him in and to keep the other backs in, and there's another thing. I see this scheme where they have the left tackle blocked down on a 4-man rush. 4-man rush, and the left tackle, instead of blocking the end, is going to block down, and you're going to put Chris Carson on the defensive end. Vince Lombardi could come out of his grave and debate me, and I'll still go toe-to-toe in an argument with him. I understand the idea is where you can get double team inside. But if you're putting Chris Carson on an end, who, by the way, he got blown up, as you could expect, and Russell Wilson has to evade all that, that protection scheme, that would be, to me, like, okay, your left tackle, you're paying him to block a right end. That's what he does. Everybody used to get up in arms. Walter Jones is holding out. Who cares if Walter Jones is? You know what his playbook says? Oh, what do you run on lead? Block the end. What do you run on inside zone away? Block the end. What do you do? Block on 3 jet protection. Block the end. What do you block on 2 jet protection? Block the end. Block the end. You're a left tackle. Block the end. Now, if the left tackle is coming down to block, and Chris Carson is blocking the end, that would be like saying, we're going to pinch hit. Nelson Cruz, and we're going to put a pitcher in there. Okay. I mean, come on. What are you doing? You're left. So I don't know. That's just again getting back to the biplane and the sign that you're saying. So their schemes were just revealing. If all you did is watch the scheme, or had a drawing like a game plan, NFL. This is what Seattle's protection did. You wouldn't even have to watch the game if you watched the review, the game plan, meaning for week 2. Somebody was looking at the protection scheme of Seattle. You would just say, oh, my God, their line's horrible. You could come back from a mission in New Guinea, and you've been gone for 10 years, and you could read, what, that's their protections? Oh, my God, their line must be just god-awful, and they know it.
Yep. Or they wouldn't be bringing all those guys in. That's Hugh Breedlove Millen. Good stuff. Hugh has come out of the gates, Slickhawk. He has come out of the gates like a thoroughbred. We're entering the first turn, and we still got a long way to go.
Yeah, the problem is he forgot how good of a hitter Giovanni Gallardo is.
Oh, yeah, Giovanni. I'll tell you, there's a pitcher you can pitch it for. But Hugh's going to give us – we're going to do a little positive and a little negative in the next. So we're going to do a little something called 3 up and 3 down. 3 guys that Hugh gives thumbs up to and why. 3 guys and maybe one
wait, do they all have to be Seahawks?
Yes, they have to be Seahawks.
Okay.
And then 3 that he's going to give a thumbs down to. I think he may have already given one. I think he wears 88 or something like that. Might get one of those 3 downs next on 950 KJR. Had this idea last night, so I was sitting around prepping for the show. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but we'll give it a try. We'll give it a try. 3 up, 3 down. Yes, it's a baseball term, but we're going to use it for football here. 3 guys that Hugh Millen, when he's watching the tape into the wee hours of Sunday night, throws that thumb up and says, nice job. Nice job today, so-and-so. And then on the flip side, 3 guys that he turns that thumb upside down and gives a big negatory to. But I'm a positive guy, Hugh. I like to start with the positive. So we spent some time talking negatives in the first 20 minutes of the show. So who would you like to throw your first thumb up to yesterday?
Well, I don't think I'm going to be reinventing any wheels. I thought it was just watching 29 out there was just.
I forgot how fast he was.
Yeah, I mean, he's still young enough. He's young enough to play fast and aggressive, throw his body in there. He has a love of the game that's elite. In the NFL, you get different personalities. You got guys that they love being football players. They love the lifestyle. They love the calendar. They love the paycheck, of course, and the whatever fame or whatever acclaim, I should say, comes from being an NFL player. But they don't necessarily love football. This guy just absolutely loves football. It's so clear with him. So I thought he was, from a Seattle perspective, the player of the game. I thought Sheldon Richardson.
Oh, man.
Sheldon Richardson is going to be a real impactful player to this team. And it's not just the plays he makes. Please don't evaluate Sheldon Richardson on the plays that he made. I mean, there was one, I was watching the game with kids and play ball, and it was just the perfect embodiment where Sheldon Richardson gets great penetration. Now he doesn't assist on the tackle, but because he gets great penetration, Bobby Wagner is able to quickly decipher it was a running play to Seattle's right, Green Bay's left. Sheldon Richardson gets this penetration, and it opens up a hole in the defensive line. And Wagner is able to just fire his gun, shoot right through that gap, and stop the runner for a 2-yard loss. Now that looks like Bobby Wagner.
Great play by Bobby Wagner.
Bobby Wagner is that's why he's first team All Pro. And yet you reverse engineer that play, and it's Sheldon Richardson's penetration and how the Packers respond to his penetration that creates this green light for Bobby Wagner to take, the linebackers have gap responsibilities. And we used to call it the Junior Seau angle, because Junior Seau, I was playing for the Broncos, so we watched a lot of opponent tape, and we'd see Junior Seau, and he would he'd just say, screw my gap responsibility. If I see something, I'm going. And he had enough acceleration, athleticism, strength to make the play and to finish it. And, Bobby Wagner, the light turns green momentarily. Why does it turn green? Because of Sheldon Richards. I'm highlighting one play, but his impact I thought was great. And
I used the term when I was sitting with my friends watching the game yesterday. I used the term, he looks graceful on some of his pass rushing opportunities. There was a time where he came after the tackle and did this reverse pivot, almost like a basketball move when you come at a guy and you reverse pivot and spin.
Yeah.
And he spun right around him, and the play was flowing to the left and made the play. I just thought, man, for a man that big, he's got great feet, great balance, and really looked good.
Yeah, and interior linemen, they're judged on their athleticism and the combination. He's carrying a little bit of a belly, but that he's able to use that. Great defensive tackles. They're not going to have a six pack. And so he's got the right body, the right frame where he's large enough to be hard to root out, but he's athletic enough to penetrate and play with quickness in short ranges. And this is all you need to know, at least for me. Everything I need to know about Sheldon Richardson when he was at Missouri and they play Texas A&M and Johnny Manziel. You remember, if you can in your mind's eye recall Johnny Manziel and
of course,
and the all of his Tarkenton routine, his frankly Russell Wilson routine athletically. Heisman Trophy winner.
Yep.
They would spy on Johnny Manziel with Sheldon Richardson.
Wow.
And they just felt like he had the athleticism to run down Johnny Manziel sideline to sideline. And they felt like that was the best use of his athleticism, not to have him try and beat an offensive lineman and then just by the way the play develops, have Manziel just spurt and scamper. Mm-hmm. They felt like the scampering was the biggest thing they had to shut down, and they used Sheldon Richardson to do it. So that tells me a lot about his athleticism, and you saw a lot of it on display yesterday.
And the third thumbs up. You got an Earl, you got a Sheldon, and who else? You're going to stick with the defense again, aren't you?
Well, I made mention. I think offensively, the guy that NFL quarterbacks are judged on winning. It was the type of game for Russell that if Seattle wins a mutter, you come back and you say, "Oh, what the grit, the guts." He found a way to make this play. He found a way to make that play. Maybe if that flyers up ball is officiated well, Seattle gets the ball on the 1 yard line, maybe throws a touchdown pass. You just say, here's the 5 or 10 things he did real well, and that's your focus. When you lose, you tend to focus on the plays he didn't make. But I will highlight this aspect. Just the guy's courage, as I said, and his the fact that he's not breaking down mental, his strength of mind, to be under that and not be harping on his teammates and not be, not be, moping and what have it, you listen to the post game press conference. I think his positivity, there's a lot of NFL quarterbacks that would just feel, really, you're kidding me? You're going to put me under this duress? Because it was just, it's ridiculous what they're asking him to do. To be behind that line. And yet, so I'm going to focus not on Russell Wilson, the entire performance, Russell Wilson's winning attitude,
okay,
and team first attitude and leadership attitude to not get down. Just I know I'm throwing. You'd say, well, that's what a professional should do. That in theory, that's true. In reality, it isn't.
That's
we
not
see
what
guys
they do.
that
Yep.
get really frustrated,
Of course,
including Aaron Rodgers. We've seen Aaron Rodgers where his body language is.
It was terrible after the interception. His body language was terrible.
But we've seen him get very clear with his body language how he's directing his frustration at his offensive line when he's not getting protected. So, and I think Richard Sherman. He wasn't getting picked on.
Yeah, never heard his name, basically, which is a good thing for a cornerback.
No news is good news.
Yep, exactly.
And if there's one quarterback in the NFL, I remember talking to Dan Marino Marino was one of the all-time gunslingers. He wasn't scared of anybody. In my mind, he's the best passer that ever walked planet Earth. Not necessarily the best quarterback, top 10, but the best passer. And I remember talking to him pregame, and somehow we talked about Deion Sanders. I ain't throwing out Deion. I ain't. And I used to watch tape. I was in the AFC East, so I watched him all the time, and he wasn't scared of anybody. But the one guy he admitted to be scared. Why? If I throw it to Deion, eventually he's gonna pluck one, and then he's doing his high dance.
Yeah, he's taking it back. He's not just picking it off. He's taking it 70 yards. Exactly.
And so Aaron Rodgers has basically told us he's waving the white flag with respect to Richard Sherman. Yep. And that has been proven by his actions over several games, and it continued yesterday.
Hugh's throwing some roses. Now he gets to throw some stones in the next segment. If you got a text for us, 49451, you got an Ask Hugh question. We'll get to some of those in the 8 o'clock hour. We also got Ian Furness live from Green Bay. He's going to show up. Hugh and I can blister Ian with a few questions on what he found out in the locker room after the game yesterday and just kind of the mood of the team. We got Fact or Fiction at 8:30. Mike Holmgren in studio from 9 to 10. It is the Monday morning quarterback on 950 KJR. Ian Furness live from Green Bay in about 15 minutes. Your text as well at 49451. You got an Ask Hugh question. We can't get to everything today, so, I mean, this is probably going to be a 2-day situation where we're asking questions about this game. Too much to talk about, no question about it. Hugh gave us his 3 thumbs up, his 3 up. Now it's time for his 3 down. How many of the 3 will be members of the Seahawk offensive line? Well, let's find out. Hugh, what do you?
I don't know.
What do you got for us?
I don't know. Call me a name. I could have positively. I think I mentioned 4. KJ Wright, Bobby Wagner. There's a lot more than 3 that you could single out for having good games. But unfortunately, there's a lot more than 3 that you can signal out for needing to play better. I mentioned Jimmy Graham before. Just really disappointed in really everything. But it starts with effort. I just felt like from a blocking standpoint, he was just, he's at the point of attack and he's losing blocks on smoke screens and out there on stretches. The stretch is coming his way and his man disengages after a moment and is either the primary tackler or an assisted tackle. And he just, I don't know, there's a certain, I don't care, body language about that. His routes, he's not looking fast. It doesn't look like he's trying to use technique. They're using him too much in pass blocking. So maybe the attitude isn't where it needs to be. That would be conjecture. I'm just going by what I see with his feet and his technique. He's not running routes with precision. So I just thought Jimmy Graham was a disappointment. Even the time where they end up throwing to him down the middle, they screw up the scheme and Tyler Lockett runs in down the middle too. That's a busted assignment where Jimmy Graham's supposed to be the guy dissecting the safeties and Tyler Lockett now takes his man in there. So maybe that's a result of Lockett having not practiced all summer, but they get a bust. So Jimmy Graham's maybe best opportunity for a touchdown was foiled by a missed assignment by Seattle. So that's just, I don't know, just indicative all the way around. The offensive line, what can you say? I'm on some level, I'm kind of focused on some of the money that Seattle's spending because Jimmy Graham here at $10 million is the number 5 highest paid guy, but Luke Jokel is number 8. And, you saw his struggles. Some of the other guys, the offensive line, you'd say, well, they're not getting paid much, but I suppose it doesn't matter when Russell Wilson's running for his life. He doesn't care if Luke Jokel's getting $7 million or Reese Odiombo's making, $500,000, whatever he's making. If a guy's missing his block, it's hurting the Seattle Seahawks. So Reese Odiombo is going to get more hurries and more sacks, more quarterback hits, but Jermaine Ifedi, the ground that he's giving up and, the pressures and there's no statistic for the offensive lineman getting pushed back into the quarterback's lap.
Right.
It's probably the most impactful aspect of football that is not reflected in any statistic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's not even a pressure. It's not even a pressure allowed if you get pushed back into. They don't mark you down for if you get, giving up a pressure where you're still in front of the defensive end rushing, but you're right in the quarterback's face.
I mean, I could think of others. I got to check myself on that. I mean, if Richard Sherman has blanket coverage and he doesn't see action all day, then he needs a stat for, a blanket.
Right.
I mean, how many blankets does he, because at the end of the day, he's going to have 37 blankets, He's going to stay real warm. Trey Madden, we talked about this during a segment out at training camp. I'm just surprised. There's God love him. He's giving you the best effort. He just doesn't look like an NFL fullback to my eye at all. When you had
he's not a fullback,
Will
right?
Tukuafu, a converted defensive lineman, that seemed to be an he played the Seahawks way. Like, we're trying to play with physical.
Yeah, hit a guy in the nose and open up a hole for the running back.
When he was the lead blocker and he hit a Sam linebacker, he
blew him up.
He was making the other guy go south, and putting on a guy on skates. And it just seems like Trey Madden, I'm just shocked that he's a Seahawk. There's a few guys out there that that I don't know. I mean, they're. Yeah, that you're just surprised they're on the field.
Marcel Reese be that type of guy that you'd like to see?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, he's big enough. Probably more so. I'm just surprised. But while I'm on the subject, I don't know. I just felt like you weren't getting anything there. We're wrapping up. Just to finish up the point about, some of the guys that were on the field that, I don't know, when you have David Bass out there, just, I don't know. I mean, it was a nice story in training camp, but it would just,
not translate into the regular season.
It's just, he just looks conspicuous to me. Like, that's not, there's a certain caliber of player for Seattle. Cassius Marsh goes on for a 5th-round pick, and now David Bass kind of ostensibly fills that role. To me, he's looking JV. It's not looking. I don't know. I'm gonna need to see more. That rotation is an important part, and he just looks to me like a guy. Wait a minute, that's not a Seattle Seahawks defender. We'll keep talking about a couple of the other things.
Absolutely. We got to run to Ian Furness is going to join us in the next segment. We want your texts as well. Slickhawk is scouring those. What's that?
Sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted there. Sorry. Justin Coleman would be another thing,
Conspicuously
just
not belonging
wait a minute.
in the
Seattle
secondary.
I'm so used to Seattle playing great defense. And
if Jeremy Lane's out there, Justin Coleman's not playing much.
Yeah.
You went down. You went down a notch. We still got to talk about that play. We haven't even talked about that play yet. 7:57. Ian Furness is going to join us next. Your text at 49451. Fact or fiction at 8:30. We'll give away our first $1,000 weekly prize of the football season. And Mike Holmgren in studio at 9:00 as the show rolls on 950 KJR. An hour from now, breaking it all down for us. Headlines before we get to Ian Furness. Hawks lose 17-9 in Green Bay. That's what we're spending 90% of the show on. An MRI on Cardinals running back David Johnson will determine if he will miss a few weeks or 8+ weeks with a sprained wrist. Huge blow to the Seattle Seahawks' main competition for a title in the NFC West. Mariners get some good news, bad news, and then good news. The good news is, the first bit of good news is they won Friday and Saturday this weekend. The bad news is they were not able to hold a lead yesterday to get the sweep over the Angels. And the last bit of good news is they're planning on Felix Hernandez and James Paxton pitching 4 starts apiece before the end of the season. So about 20 games left, and you're going to get Felix and Paxton pitching 8 of those 20. That ain't bad. And they're 3 games out of a playoff spot. Boy, they could have gotten that win yesterday. They'd have been 2 games back, and they would have been the 3rd spot in the American League wildcard spot. Instead, now they're the 7th spot and 3 games out. Injuries in the NFL. Jags lose Allen Robinson, their wide receiver. He's going to miss a bunch of time with a knee injury. We mentioned the David Johnson one. Steelers defensive end Stephon Tuitt signed a $61 million deal on Saturday. and then on Sunday was potentially lost for the season with a bicep injury. Do we have a little intro music for Reed? Oh, my God. Will you look at that? I guess that makes sense. Well, Slick, we should probably start there because this is probably the only chance all day long on this show anyway that I'll get a chance to talk about what I witnessed.
3 overtimes?
Until like 11:54 p.m. on Saturday night. Yes, I stayed up, Ian, for Pac-12 After Dark, and it was worth every second of it, man. That was incredible.
Yeah, that was something. It ended about 2:00 in the morning here in beautiful Wisconsin. So that was it's been it's been an unpredictable year in football, college, and even the NFL with some of the stuff that happened yesterday. It was predictable what happened in Green Bay. That's probably the one thing that you could kind of predict and get a Sharpie out for. But yeah, it was that was something else.
Does that mean that once we get to Apple Cup time, it'll be a rewind to 2 years ago where Coug fans are telling us all how Tyler Helinski is going to be able to come in when Luke Falk is on the sidelines with his 14th concussion of the season, that Tyler Helinski is going to be able to come in and beat the Huskies in the Apple Cup and spoil their chance at a Pac-12 championship, and then the Dogs win by 4 touchdowns, and then Coug fans go, well, man, we had Tyler Helinski at quarterback. We didn't have any chance to win. The revisionist history was amazing.
That was Brugman, I think. That was a different Tyler. So that was a different. Helinski was still in high school then, Dick. So I don't know if will be the case, and God knows who could be the quarterback that week. I'll be honest with you. As much as smack as I want to talk, Washington's good, man. They're legit good. I think Wazoo. I don't know. I think they're good. I think they have a tendency to do what our NFL team did yesterday, and that's kind of at times sleepwalk through things. And they probably thought they could mail it in a little bit against Boise. They needed a little help from Boise. It's always good to see a quarterback like the kid, the Montel kid, or whatever his name was, Cozart. Is that his name, from Boise?
Yeah.
He basically couldn't have handed them the ball and told Pallure just to walk in any easier. So it was we needed a little help in that one. But hey, now bring on the Beavs. Bring on the Beavs. Try to go 1-0 in conference play.
Oh, you
1-0 week every week, my friend.
You guys will beat the Beavs by 30 next week. That shouldn't be too much of a problem. But you're in Green Bay, and you're still there. So you don't get the early flight out like Greg Bell. You don't get the hell out of there early. You're sticking around.
I saw his tweet. Listen, those guys are whining and complaining. Oh, we're working, blah, blah. You know what? We finished, and because you're on TV, we finished editing our 6 packages last night about 9:45 local time. So by the time we finish that stuff, we're back at the hotel, and then it's I always laugh. People say it's hard to get to Pullman. You hear teams bitch about that. It's hard to get to Pullman. And try getting to Green Bay, man. It ain't easy.
No, it's not.
It's if you have a charter like an NFL team, that's one thing. But if you don't, it's kind of a nightmare to get here. Hopefully, this is the last time we come here for a couple of years.
With the ratings Q13 Fox gets for the Seahawks, they can't afford a charter for you over to Green Bay and back.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. That's for some reason that's not a priority. I don't know why, but it seems to be not a priority on their list of what they want to do. So yeah, we'll get back sometime tonight.
Well, let's get some big picture thoughts from you. Obviously, we've spent a lot of time talking about the offensive line. One thing we haven't talked about yet, and kind of surprisingly so at this point, was the play, and the play being Naz Jones taking it back. The Hawks are going to be up 10-0. But wait a second, there's the Cliff Averill decides he needs to put his hands on Aaron Rodgers for some reason, even though Rodgers is like 5 yards behind Naz Jones. And then Jeremy Lane gets thrown to the deck. I mean, it was a hell of a suplex by Devontae Adams throwing him to the deck. And yet, they always say they get the retaliator. I'm trying to figure out what the retaliation was from Jeremy Lane. What did you make of that play?
Well, I'm kind of watching everything from up there, and the first thing I saw was Averill. I thought it was Bennett initially for me because we're a ways away up there, but yeah, nevertheless, doesn't matter. I thought the same thing. Like, just stay away, Like, I'm literally muttering that. Mike Ferrari from Como sitting next to me and go, stay away. Oh, and as soon as he just and really what you said, Dick, is right. He kind of put his hands on him, and the officials. There's 2 officials actually right there, right? I mean, they're right there. And I'm like, why? Why are we doing this? And, he does it, and next thing you know, it's, you see the one flag come out. And then I saw the scuffle at the end. All I saw was Lane and Adams wrestling around on the ground. I see the flags fly. And and obviously the penalty gets called on Lane only, which, whether or not he threw a punch or not before the TV cameras picked it up, I kind of doubted. It looks like it was more of a forearm shiver when it was all said and done. And, the fact that Adams didn't get a penalty is just egregious. I mean, it's a horrible, horrible play by an official, or a horrible call by an official that is a game changer. I mean, Coleman comes in, Shaq Griffin, is kind of on his own at that point. You're down an important part of your defense. It was bad. Now, that said, their secondary didn't lose them the football game necessarily, but that touchdown coming off the board, that certainly was a costly one.
Does that make the difference, you think? If it's 10-0, you think we got a different outcome in that game?
Well, I don't know if it would be 10-0 because who knows how it plays out after that. If Seattle's as aggressive as they were at the end of the first half going down the field,
true.
I mean
that's true.
They could have been, they might have been, but I think there was a sense of desperation on that final drive, and they got helped out on that final drive of the half by McCarthy. I mean, he calls the 2 timeouts, they get the first down, and then all of a sudden you can take one shot, and they get the one shot, and then they kind of chip away and get all the way down there and get a field goal. But I don't know if that happens necessarily. You don't know at that point. I certainly think it affects Rodgers. There's no doubt about that, and there was a highlight yesterday was the front four. I mean, and the way the defense as a whole played. I mean, they gave up too many first down conversions to Green Bay, and they couldn't get off the field a couple times when they needed to, especially when Ryan was pinning them in deep. And they all admitted that afterwards. But at the end of the day, when you give up one long touchdown run or drive, you should win a football game, and obviously that didn't happen.
No question about it. Well, Ian, what's on the big 12-3 extravaganza? Because I doubt it's you.
I think Softy's doing it today, to be honest with you.
Really?
I think, because we've got the Monday Night Football doubleheader, right? So
yes.
I think that's what's going on because we're only doing live and local. Listen, we only need to go live and local so long today. I mean, I don't know how long you guys want to, sit through this the talk. In fact, I'm watching highlights again of the game on TV as we speak, and it's just. You're not going to believe this, but the 2 guards got blown up again and again.
They're still getting beat? The guards are still getting beat the next morning, huh? Oh, boy. It was brutal, man.
It was bad. It was bad.
What was the locker room, before we let you go, what was the locker room vibe like, particularly the offensive linemen?
I would say it was odd in this way. And a loss to Green Bay anytime isn't fun because, I think the Adams thing kind of underscored the feelings between the teams. It was pretty chippy. I mean, the Bennett, KJ Wright scuffle. I mean, Adams was going at it with guys all day. Cobb was as well. So the two teams don't like each other. They don't like to lose to these guys. But I think afterwards there was I just felt like they went into this game playing with house money. Hey, if you beat Green Bay at home, opening game, great. If not, that's fine. You don't really expect to get that one, and away you go. And I kind of had that feeling. Now, not everybody felt that way by any means, but it still kind of had that weird vibe to it when it was all said and done. It wasn't as depressing and bad and kind of sad as you usually normally have a game like that.
I'm with you. I called it a gravy game on Friday. It's an icing on the top. Use whatever term as long as, and I gave 2 caveats. One caveat was as long as you don't face a rash of injuries out of it that are going to affect you down the road.
Right.
And 2, that you don't get blown out like you did last year in Green Bay, because that could really, you could mess with your psyche if you came out of there losing 37-13 or something like that. As long as those 2 things didn't happen, which neither of them did, I was going to be fine going forward at 0-1 losing in Lambeau Field. And
this defense won't let that happen.
Of course not.
I think the one silver lining that you can come out of there thinking is that this defense will not let that happen. That front 4 they are scary. I mean, they got after it. I mean, Green Bay did a decent job at times of protecting him, and Aaron Rodgers, they won't see that guy. I mean, that's the best quarterback in the NFL. I mean, he's in my opinion. I mean, he's just, and the way he's able to break contain, kind of make adjustments. I mean, he ran a couple times when they were trying to. Everything about Rodgers, it's a hell of a challenge. And the fact they can rotate guys in as often as they did. I mean, they wore down. There's no doubt about it. But it wasn't hot. It wasn't because of that. But they just wore down. They're on the field too much. I mean, the time of possession was 2-1 in favor of Green Bay. I mean, it was Seattle had one drive of more than 7 plays, right, or more than 8 plays. They had 11-play drive. I mean, it was outside of that, everything was short. So they wore down. But that defense won't be giving up 37 this year. I can guarantee you that.
Safe trip back, man. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
See you guys.
You bet. Ian Furness joining us, doing work for us out there, doing work for Q13, who I imagine had just the monster. I haven't looked at. I got to look at Aaron Levine's Twitter. He usually throws that out, and just I'm sure absolutely gargantuan ratings for that game yesterday. Let's throw open the texting line, Slickhawk, shall we? I think we got some Ask Hugh questions on the texting line. I'll start here with an email that I got from Joe. Joe says, hey, you're right to criticize the Seahawks' low offensive output in their past first games, but you failed to highlight their continued propensity for idiotic penalties. I've had it with Carroll's policy of leniency regarding penalties. His teams have annually have been one of the most penalized. This goes back to his USC days. Does he seek out Neanderthals that always react in such a negative manner, or does he coach them to play like that? Either way, I'm done having cold water thrown in my face by another undisciplined player after seemingly great play in the first few minutes of the game. Let's talk about the, you have two huge plays, Hugh. The Cliff Averill push in the back, and then the not being able to get off the, who was the 12th man that wasn't able to get off the field on the touchdown? I'm trying to remember who that was.
That's a good question.
Yeah, but two monster plays, mental errors, and the email was right. I mean, I'm not going to go as far as he did with the Neanderthal players and anything, but the Seahawks seemingly have more mental errors than a lot of other teams.
Well, and you want to be a team that's a tough out. If you're going to get beat, you'd want to say, hey, look, we know we're not going to go undefeated all the time, even if we, lightning strikes or the stars align, call it what you want, and you have 1 year. Hasn't happened since 1972, right? So you're not going to probably go undefeated, but you want to be a tough out, and part of being a tough out is you don't beat yourself. With respects to the penalty, the Jeremy Lane and the block in the back, let me first preface it by repeating what I said. I thought the lack of call on Jimmy Graham on the pass interference, I thought that was just absolutely unforgivable. I thought it was horrible officiating. The ball was lofted. It didn't, as we say, explode on him visually. For him to miss that call is just unforgivable, and it really killed Seattle because it obviously was a net 4-point miss by that official.
Right.
Having said that, the interception by Naz Jones, as I look at it, it's a block in the back. It's at the 40-yard line. Aaron Rodgers is faster than Nazir Jones. And if I'm an official, I have to, do we say sometimes where quarterbacks are chasing the ball and somebody pushes them in the back and it's not called? Yeah. And that's when there's no chance the guy could get there.
Are you implying Aaron Rodgers would have caught Naz Jones?
I think so.
Really?
Well, I would say this. Who do you think would win in a race between Aaron Rodgers and Naz Jones?
Yeah, but I think if you give Naz Jones a 4-yard head start from the 40-yard line, Naz Jones is going to win.
Okay. All right. You and I are going to come to blows on this. Because look, you in my mind, you have to officiate that where you have to say, look, you got to let a guy make the greatest play in the history of football. Okay? Now, there's a point where humanly it's not possible. There's a point where I don't care if Usain Bolt is on the field. When you consider the angles and you consider where the ball is and where the defender is, if it's just an inconsequential push in the back and it's not malicious, I'm not calling blocking in the back because he can't make that play. But if I'm an official right there and I see at the 40-yard line a defensive lineman running the ball and a quarterback that I know is athletic, just looking at the angles, eyeballing that, I'm calling block in the back every time.
I'm not disagreeing. Where's our disagreement?
I thought you just said you didn't think he could catch him.
I don't, but that doesn't mean I don't think it should have been called. I do think it should have been called. I agree with the texter, the emailer. It was a mental mistake by Cliff Averill. He shouldn't have laid his hands on him.
Well, I think that you could make an argument. Even as it was, I was surprised Aaron Rodgers pulled up. So, yeah, to me it's 50-50. Well, if it's 50-50, if I'm an official, it's a block in the back. Don't do it.
Absolutely.
And then, okay. I didn't see anything that should warrant an ejection from Jeremy Lane, but we've known for decades that it's always the guy who retaliates.
Yeah.
If anything, the other guy was more of a victim. But Jeremy Lane's down there trying to put his elbow in a guy's Adam's apple. You know how much pressure it takes to break a guy's Adam's apple? It's like, look it up online. It's like 4 pounds of pressure. No, don't put your freaking elbow in a guy's throat. You're going to get 15 yards and you might get ejected. So I have absolutely zero defense of Jeremy Lane in that situation. None. Okay. There is a line between being tough and being a team that doesn't back down, and a physical team, and a team that is got a bunch of badasses. And guess what? When that line, it's not a gray area and the graph just slowly droops off. It's a cliff. You're up here, and I've got my hand real high in terms of your toughness, and then you fall off a cliff. The cliff falls off. And in my mind, you have zero toughness, and all of your toughness is replaced with stupidity, idiocy. Yep. When you elect to take your brand of toughness with your elbow on a guy's Adam's apple, the toughness evaporates, and it's replaced the only thing I can see is stupidity. So I have no defense of Jeremy Lane in that situation. You're on the ground. You've just decided to go rogue. And you know what? If you want to be John McEnroe in a tennis match and throw your freaking racket and bitch at there's a lot of things you do in individual sports. Don't do them in team sports. So I don't get now. That's a separate topic from whether or not he did enough to be thrown out. I don't know how Martellus Bennett can just wind up after the play and smack a defenseless KJ Wright and he doesn't get ejected. But no. But if you're asking me to somehow say that Jeremy Lane got screwed, I'm not even entering that into the picture because I'm so dominated by the thought of Jeremy Lane being an idiot, not being a tough guy, being a dumbass. And so that's my opinion on the play.
We've just warmed Hugh Millen up. He is just warmed up. We got 90 more minutes plus coming up in the next segment. Slick, how we doing this fact or fiction? We're pulling it. We're randomly. Have you randomly pulled a name out of the hat thus far?
I have not, but we will.
We will randomly pull a name out of the hat. I need to give you a pick for tonight as well because we have to start this next week's fact.
Not about tonight, but for next week's games, right?
Oh, it might be for tonight.
I don't know if we are supposed to do that.
I think we talked to Shockey. Well, I'll double check. He's in the other room.
Oh, okay. I think he's just signaled that it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. If I want to give a Monday Night Football pick, we got 2 Monday night games tonight.
Okay.
I've got one that I've just been thinking about for a few days now that I might throw out on this game tonight. 8:24. We'll give away $1,000. You better be listening. Your name may be called if you entered Fact or Fiction last week. You better listen in 5 minutes on 950 KJR. I want to give away some money, Slickhawk.
Well, it's fun to do.
It is fun to do.
There's no real drawback, no negative. You just kind of... You like to do it.
So one of the people we have on hold right now is going to be $1,000 richer a minute from now. We know who it is because you've randomly reached into your virtual hat, right, and selected a winner out of the...
Don't tell them it's a virtual hat. Make them think it's a real hat.
Yes, because you actually put 8,553 names in your hat over there.
It's a big hat.
We had 8,553 responses in week 1. That's not bad. That's not bad. And what's even more impressive is that 5,123 of them, so well over 60%, were correct.
Oh, that's good.
In picking fact or fiction to our predictions over the week. Now, we had a pretty good week.
Yes.
Thanks to me, not you.
Well, you missed one too, so
but I got
let's not
right.
go crazy.
So my against the spread percentage is 67%.
Yeah, mine's 50.
Yours is 50.
But
Dave Softy Maulers and Kevin Shockey's 100%. They went 5-0 against the spread this week. So if you just went fact on all of our 10 picks this week, you would have gone 8-2. Against the spread.
Boy,
that's how we roll here on 950 KJR. Who needs the Vegas handicappers when you've got us going 8-2 against the spread?
If you've done 3 and I've done 2, how come you're doing Monday Night Football? We should even it up.
I'll let you do 3 this week.
Okay.
I'm just going to do tonight.
Okay.
But I'll let you do 3 this week. Maybe
All right.
you can do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I'll do Monday and Friday. That sound good?
Yeah, that works.
All right. Now, the top 100, just so you know, the top 100 in the overall contest will be posted on sportsradiokjr.com Wednesday at noon.
Oh.
So if
every week?
Yes, every week will be posted on Wednesday at noon.
Who do we trick into doing that?
Probably Shocky.
Probably for free.
Probably Shocky. All right, so we give away $1,000, then I'll give you the pick for the day. Let's see. Oh, you're saying line 1 is our winner, huh?
That's the one.
All right. Joe in Seattle. Are you there, Joe?
I am, yeah.
Well, that's too bad because I was looking for your mark. No, I'm just kidding. You're a winner, Joe!
Oh, sweet.
$1,000, man. All you had to do is play Fact or Fiction. Now, how many times, I hope you have the right answer to this, but how many times
There's no wrong answer.
How many times did you play Fact or Fiction this past week?
Yes, I was kind of weak. It was only 3 times.
3 times? Well, that's not terrible. And how many of those 3 did you get correct?
You know, I haven't checked. I honestly don't know.
All right. Do you remember which games they were?
No.
I think, didn't Shocky say one of them was the was your awesome Army over Buffalo by 16 and a half? How'd that one work there, Slickhawk?
Well, that wasn't my fault. Look,
It wasn't your fault.
Army steamrolled to victory week 1, and I just assumed that Army could not be stopped. And they couldn't be stopped. I mean, they won the game. They just didn't cover the...
you know what you do when you assume they're Slickhawk.
16. Well, I make an ass out of you and me.
That's correct. And you made an ass out of both of us because it cost us a loss in our battle, our year-long battle against the evil empire that is Softy and Shocky.
Well, my logic was sound, and my heart was true.
Well, Joe, congratulations, man. I'm assuming you're going to keep playing because you're eligible to win next week, too. I mean, just because you win once doesn't mean you can't win next week, and certainly doesn't mean that you can't win the $10,000 grand prize at the end of the year.
That'd be great.
All right,
Maybe
man.
I can contribute it to an offensive lineman.
Oh, God. Can't we all? Why don't we just tell the Emerald Queen Casino, hey, all of our prospective winners have decided they would like to donate their money to the Seattle Seahawks salary cap and try to purchase another offensive lineman. Does that sound like a plan?
Oh, sounds like a plan.
All right.
I don't know if it's going to do any good because they're still the ones who decide which offensive lineman to bring in.
That's true.
Dang.
That's true. It's like the Sonics drafting centers, isn't it? I mean, it really is. It is getting absolutely ridiculous.
Luke Jokel is the Robert Swift of
yes,
the NFL.
He is. Reese Odiambo is the Mo Sene of the Seattle Seahawks. Hey, Joe, congratulations, man. Keep playing, all right?
All right, thanks.
You bet. Joe in Seattle, it's as simple as that. Joe in Seattle listened this past week at 8:30 in the morning and 3:30 in the afternoon, and he simply texted into 49451 either fact if he believed the prediction we had or fiction if he did not believe the prediction that he had. He got 3 entries in, and there you go. So the morning show went 3-2 last week. Afternoon show went 5-0. Hey, we keep going 3-2, Slick.
That's pretty good.
You're going to win a lot of money going
Yes.
3-2 against the spread every single week. You're going to win a lot of money. In that afternoon show, they're going to cool down. I wouldn't be
Of course.
surprised. They'll go 1-4 this week. You mark my words. They will go 1-4 this week, and we will blow right by them. Pick number 1. I like both of these games tonight. I like both I've got to play on both of these games. I like the Chargers plus the 3. I liked them more when they were 3.5, but Phillip Rivers has a tendency to go into Denver and do some nasty, nasty things to the Broncos. But that's not going to be my official pick. But just keep in the back of your mind when the Chargers are winning that game tonight that Dick Fain told you so. All right? But that's not going to be my official pick. I see the New Orleans Saints going into Minnesota. A very tough place to play. A very tough defense to put up points against. And I see a 48 on the over-under in week 1 of the season when we've had lots of games this week, including Seahawks, Packers, that were defensive-oriented. I mean, I'm just looking at the totals right now in these games. I see a 42. I see a 40. I see a 39. I see a 22. I see a 26. I see a 20. I see a 33. Lots of games in the high 20s, low 30s in week 1 as the defenses seem to be ahead of the offenses. Give me the under tonight, Slickhawk.
Under.
In the first of the 2 Monday Night Football games, under 48 in the Minnesota, New Orleans. That's a really high number. Really high number. And the Saints are not the fun and gun, score 35 points away from the Superdome like they are in the Superdome. So I like that, even though I've got Drew Brees on my fantasy team and I actually need him to throw like 2 or 3 touchdowns tonight. So there's your pick for tonight. Text in right now. Our window is open, 49451. Fact, if you think the Saints-Vikings will go under 48 tonight. Or fiction, if you think it'll be 48 and over. Now keep in mind, we lose all pushes. So if the game ends up on 48, fiction is the correct answer because I'm saying that the number will be under 48. So if it's 48 and higher, I lose. All right, 8:38 on 950 KJR. We'll get to some of your texts in the next segment at 49451 after we close this window up. And Mike Holmgren at 9 o'clock on 950 KJR. 8:45. Once again, our thanks to the Emerald Queen Casino, who just flat out awesome for just deciding to give listeners just a cubic butt ton? Is that right, Slickhawk?
Cubic butt ton of the EQC's money.
That's right. We thank them. This is going to be fun on a daily basis throughout the football season. And giving $1,000 away every Monday is pretty fun, too. Let's get to the Ask Hugh portion of the show here, Slick. I'm sure there are a lot of Seahawk fans out there that, we're not able to cover everything here on a 4 hours with the Seahawks game, and I'm sure there are things that we miss. So what are some of the things that people are chattering about and want to ask Hugh about?
Dear Hugh, if you could trade Cam and Jimmy for some decent guards right now, would you?
Oof.
Wow.
Cam and Jimmy? Well, right now, just as a Seahawks fan, I hope I'm articulating this right. He's in my fan doghouse. I didn't like anything that I saw from Jimmy Graham yesterday, but Cam's my favorite Seahawk. To pry him out of my fingers, man, you're gonna have to use.
That's a good question.
Some heavy tools to get him out.
You're trading a guy in your doghouse and your favorite player, so that makes it a pretty decent question right there.
For how good are the guards? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think you could
let's call it 2 above average NFL guards.
Yeah, you have to give me more than above average. If you're giving me 2 really really good guards, yeah, I probably
2
would.
guards good as Justin Britt as a center. How about that?
Oh, man.
2 guards that are exactly as good as Justin Britt is center.
Yesterday. And maybe a notch up. Yeah, I need to get a notch. But there is a point. It's a great question. There's a point where, I think just when you're talking about affecting winning, put it this way, Jimmy Graham is not affecting winning right now. And
he's affecting losing.
Yeah, he's just, he's just overrated. I mean, He's not a particularly great route runner, and yesterday I just thought he was just he appeared disinterested to me. Now I understand that's a hard line to cross when an analyst to sit there and say, okay, if you're carrying out the logic, in essence, I'm thrusting my conjecture into his mindset. That is not fair. I'm going to just say the signs that are reliable indicators. There's a lot of check boxes you saw yesterday. I don't know, you're losing blocks at the point of attack. At least act like you care. At least dive at somebody so it looks like you're ready to play to the last portion till the whistle. But I don't know. Run hard in a route. Use good technique in a route. Catch a damn ball when Russell Wilson puts it a perfect back shoulder throw. I mean, that's the most obvious play, but honestly, the things that draw my ire, I have a long list before that. I mean, guys drop balls. Right. But I think that drop ball may have been because of where his mind was. Yeah. Now, having said that, he's a thoroughbred, and you better keep a thoroughbred's bucket full of oats if you want what's best for you. and his bucket doesn't have much oats in it because he's doing too much pass blocking because the offensive line is doing too much whiffing.
Hugh, why should I believe that Darrell Bevell isn't terrible? Never mind the O-line personnel. It seems like whoever the personnel is, the play calling is nonsense.
Well, I've said it before. I believe it. I think the toughest proposition in sports radio is you want to walk out on a plank and you want to start criticizing an offensive coordinator. Put it this way: you better pack a couple of really potent suitcases, in my opinion, because of knowledge. Because you want to get in a room with, I'll give you a laser pointer. You take the all-22, and I'll give you the projector clicker. You go back and forth, and you describe what you see. You tell me what scheme they're in. You tell me the personnel to attack. You tell me how to do it. What have you? I just think that there's a fine line between play calling when plays are well executed. All of a sudden the play caller looks brilliant.
Right.
And an average fan, just, boy, he called a great game. And then when you're not executing, then all of a sudden you're dumping on the play caller. I'm going to just say this. There's people that know a hell of a lot more than me about football, but I've been at this thing in earnest for 45 years, and I find myself and I've been exposed to some great coaches, Mike Shanahan, Jimmy Johnson, Don Shula, Bill Parcells. That's 8 Super Bowl rings right there. Don James, College Football Hall of Fame. Troy Aikman, Dan Marino, John Elway. That's 3 Hall of Famers. Jim Everett, Chris Miller. There's 2 more Pro Bowl. Steve DeBerg, 20 years in the NFL, another Pro Bowl. I've been in quarterback rooms with a lot of people, and Norv Turner, one of the most respected offense. I mean, the list goes on. I've been exposed to what most people would say is a lot of high-level football. Not me playing high-level football. I was a freaking hack.
But you learn from all those people.
But all I have to do is pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
They're speaking English. It's not Dutch. I can understand what they're saying. If I'm paying attention, I ought to be able to learn a little. And to get me to start venturing in down that path of questioning offensive coordinators, I just think that you better really bring it in terms of understanding the difference between execution and play calling.
Right.
And I don't know, man. That's a bad offensive line. I think the receiving crew is average. Paul Richardson I think is an upgrade because how I felt about the last guy, but I think he's far from a completed receiver. I think that they got a big hole in the receiving corps still. That was maybe supposed to be filled by Amara Darboh, but they need a guy like Darboh to be, an upper level number 2 receiver in this league. And with Jimmy Graham, you say, well, Doug Baldwin is elite. He is a phenomenal, particularly slot receiver. He's not as good on the outside, but he's still good. We got 0 problems with Doug Baldwin. Top shelf. But, the idea, Jimmy Graham, right now, there's guys, on the back end of the Jacksonville Jaguars roster that can give you what Jimmy Graham's giving you. I mean, I don't know. I'm being a little reactive to a bad game, but
what about when you're talking about?
How about the fullback? The fullback.
Well,
that's
not even lay a hat on anybody.
Yeah, the fullback. You're trying to be a team with physicality. The fullback is, he's losing every battle in the backfield.
Well, how big is he?
That's the point we made in training camp. He's literally 50 pounds lighter than Will Tukuafu. Not saying Will Tukuafu is, Moose Johnson, but he
puts a hat on. Will Tukuafu puts a hat on a hat and he moves people.
You heard it when he had a collision, and he inspired the defense when he would go, put his face in the briar patch. And so, just look at the offense and you tell me how many guys you see. Because I did this yesterday. I watched the whole damn game. I was watching it till 2 a.m. Watch this thing over and over. I drive my family crazy because, instead of doing it in the office, I'm dominating the living room. Everybody's got to watch the Seahawks 19 times. And I'm looking at the offense, and how many guys do I know are above the median players in the NFL?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
on offense.
I'm talking about just every player at their position. If you're
talking
right
about the
guard,
offense, right?
I'm talking about the offense,
okay.
Right?
Well,
now the defense.
I can.
There's ton of not just above average, but elite.
Well, you're only talking
Tell me about
the quarterback,
the
wide receiver,
Doug Baldwin.
Yes. And you would assume the tight end, but he has not played like that.
He wasn't yesterday.
He wasn't. So you're talking about 2 out of 11.
You compare him to Travis Kelce or Gronk or whatever.
No.
I mean, he's a mere shadow of that type of impact.
Justin Britt.
Justin Britt's above average, yes.
So you got 3 guys out of 11 that are
There you
above
go.
average. What can Darrell Bevell? I saw 1 sprint out by Russell. I think I saw 1 bootleg. Would those plays could you not implement them more to just get him out of the pocket, away from the clutter? I know it cuts down half of your passing routes when you're running over to the right side and you're only throwing to half the field, but I mean, just to do anything to buy him a little bit more time.
Yeah, if you're scouting, the naked, you're expecting they're predictable routes. You can have somebody in the flat. You're going to have an intermediate crosser coming from the backside, and I think teams scout the hell out of that because Russell's so good on the run. He's a threat to keep the ball, and he throws. That play he had at the end of the second quarter, where he was running to his right, that strike to Doug Baldwin, that ball was 40 yards in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually 45. But he just ripped that thing, on the move. He can really throw on the run. He's got great velocity. He's got great accuracy. He's one of the top passers on the run that I've seen, So I think teams, they scout that naked play. And and if you're not getting anything out of the running game, if every time you run the stretch away, particularly stretch left to set up the naked right,
and you're not getting anything on the
why you're not blocking at the point of attack.
Right.
You're not even blocking
why
on the
respect
backside.
the boot? Why respect the naked? Because
you're not getting the hard flow. It's not like if the stretch is killing you. If you're getting 7 yards every time you run stretch, you're more likely to get flow from linebackers, even safety personnel, and then the naked is more likely to come open. So it's a synergistic effect that Seattle's not getting with the run in the pass game.
The coach has entered the studio. I'm a little disappointed. There's no Tommy Bahama on today. That bums me out a little bit on a 75-degree day. I'd expect the Tommy
Bahama-like shirt,
ish, but no, that's not it.
It's
that's
not exactly.
There are no designs on it.
No.
There's no
it is a Tommy. There's a little. Look at that. There's a little sailfish on his pocket.
You got a sail. Yep.
Oh, yep. I stand corrected.
It's got that UCLA blue though with the suntan. The suntan. Oh, that killed him. That hurt him.
Stand corrected.
Carolina
he does
blue.
have the Tommy. We get full Mike Holmgren in Tommy gear next on 950 KJR. I'm well enough to know if 2 things Slick Hawk will make Coach Holmgren burn inside. Yeah. 1, mental mistakes. Stupid penalties. Okay.
Yeah.
And 2, poor officiating.
I think we've seen both kind of happen.
I'll add a third.
What's that? Lack of effort?
No, bad, ugly offense.
Bad, ugly offense.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
just
Coach,
checking all the boxes.
We got the trifecta for you this week, didn't we, Coach?
You know what?
Oh, yeah, we got to get the hoop in.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Now, are you all right? Yeah. No more rocket balls, please.
I was
teamed up. No, I know.
Your home for the NFL and the 12th man presents Mike Holmgren.
28 pass protection. Did you make a call?
Yeah, I had to. I made a lucky call.
Powered by Geico, by Tacoma Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram, by El Gaucho, by 3010, by Master Park Airport Valet Parking, by Advanced Hair, by Providence St. Joseph Health, and by Aging Options.
Once you're a coach, you're always a coach. It never leaves you.
Now, Mike Holmgren on Seattle Sports Radio 950.
Okay, let's do it. One more time.
KJR.
Mental mistakes, poor officiating, and bad offense. Holmgren, ready, go.
It's good to see you guys.
How you doing?
How you doing, Mike?
Yeah, that was a much anticipated game yesterday. 2 great teams. It surprised just a little bit. I knew both teams. I knew certainly Seattle's defense much better than Green Bay's, but I was a little surprised that we didn't see a little more offense yesterday. Mm-hmm. Actually, from both teams. Although Green Bay did a better job, obviously, of controlling the clock.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. I think Seattle's defense got tired. They were on the field a lot. But, all the questions we had, or I had going into the game about first of all, personnel groupings. The offensive line, the running back situation, the receivers on offense. Russell Wilson was the only lock, in my opinion, and I suppose that Jimmy Graham. I don't know if I have any answers, Dick, after that game. They didn't run the ball at all.
Mm-hmm.
The offensive line was very vulnerable to a good defensive line and pass rush, in my opinion. The receivers, Doug had a good game, I thought, when they got him the ball. Richardson did okay, but I'd like to see. I would like to see more offense. They couldn't get first downs. They couldn't. It just was not a good offensive day for them.
The mental mistakes, Coach. What do you tell Cliff Averill after the game? What do you tell Jeremy Lane after the game? And maybe give me your thought, particularly on that play and the flag that was thrown. Was it warranted? Was the ejection warranted? Just wrap up that play, which really, if you have to sum up the entire game into one play, I mean, that one play very well may have decided the football game, even though it came very early in the game.
Yeah, I think it was too bad because it was a huge turnaround in that game. But I would always, if that would happen when I was coaching, if a player intercepted a ball and was going in for a touchdown, like what happened yesterday, or a punt return, or a kickoff return, when you see them pop and they're going to score, have a pretty good idea they're going to score, I quit looking at the runner.
You look at what's behind.
I was just looking, saying, okay, now be careful. I was talking to myself, of course, but I'd just be, and I think your players have to understand that. He's going in. The thing's 15 yards ahead of you. Any block you make, even if it's a good block, typically it could be flagged, and typically it's not going to have a great effect on the play.
I thought he was gone. You and I disagree.
Yeah.
I thought Nas Jones was gone.
He was going to get close. Aaron Rodgers may have tackled him. He may have tackled him. He's faster than the defensive lineman, but he would have been close, and they would have gotten the ball down in close if he did tackle him, and all those kind of things. But the fact remains, you have, when you talk to your team, they must be made aware of that situation and be very. You got to cautiously approach those things. I know they want to get the knockout shot. They want to get the big hit,
especially when it's Aaron Rodgers. You want
to
get the free blast on the number one quarterback in the league.
And he didn't hit him hard, but he did push him.
Rodgers
in the back.
didn't even fall down.
No, but he did. But it altered his path, and he did hit him in the back. So I had no problem with that. I think the other play, Hugh and I were talking about just a little bit earlier. I think one of the mistakes the official made. Although they had some other mistakes in the game.
Which play are we talking now, Mike?
The one when Lane got thrown out.
Same play, same play, just the other end of the field.
That the official, when he announced the play, he said punch. I mean, it was announced. He punched, And I think when you look at the replays and stuff, it's hard to see a punch. It is. They showed a bunch of stuff. Aikman and Buck are doing the game on TV, and they could, they're looking at it.
You know why it's impossible to see a punch, Coach? Because
a
punch wasn't thrown.
Yeah.
That's why it's impossible
to see
a punch.
But there had been some chippiness earlier in the game with Cobb and Lane. And so when it starts like that, early in a football game, you got to go over and you say, now they're going to be watching you. Now they're not going to let this escalate in the first game of the year between two marquee teams. They're going to call the game this way, so be careful. Then all of a sudden you get that play. And there's a skirmish. There's a scuffle. Now, you got to be smarter than that. You just can't do that. And I think Jeremy Lane, had his he didn't throw a punch, but he was hammering the guy's neck, and it was not a pretty deal. And so I didn't like the fact he got thrown out, but I understand it. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a little bit, to throw a guy out of a game, unless they've changed the emphasis in those league meetings. Maybe they're going into this season saying, okay, all the chippiness, all that stuff.
We're going to nip in the bud.
Yeah, because they called Cobb. They called Cobb early on for taunting.
Yeah.
To push him way back. And how many times last season did you see a guy get up and get in the guy's face and then walk away?
Of course.
But
I saw it in the Dallas game last time, like 4 times from wide receivers in the Dallas game. They never got thrown.
Yeah, so you get an official, you get a crew going, okay. And then right away you're going, okay, they're going to call this tight.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing you got to think about. But, there's no excuse. And it was a big play in the game. I think it had a huge effect on the game because no one was going to score a lot of points yesterday.
Right. But even if you don't call the foul on Jeremy Lane, and what was it? Jerry Mark Brady said he was giving him the business. As you're describing, I think he's the elbow to the throat is maybe falls under the heading of giving him the business. But you still have the block in the back, right? So just to clarify, and we'll move on to the Jimmy Graham. If you're the official, Mike, put that hat on for a second. And even if we give you the chance, the benefit of video replay, which of course you wouldn't have on that situation, but you call as far as the block in the back, is that a yes or no for you? Are you pulling the flag on the block in the back, and then how are you handling the Cobb Jeremy Lane interaction? If you're an official for both of those,
I call the block in the back.
You call block in the back,
yes.
And then how about Cobb Lane? How do you officiate?
I go offsetting.
Yep.
Offsetting.
Yeah, that's
exactly how I agree, and no
exactly
ejection.
Right.
Yeah,
that's
no
exactly how I do.
Right.
Now, how about Jimmy Graham? Since we're talking about officials, these are the plays that everybody's gonna be talking about. The water cooler. Jimmy Graham on a 3rd down. Russell Wilson, he's pressured, almost kind of heroic to get the ball out in that area. As it turns out, it's pretty close to the area. How'd you see that? Break that down from a football standpoint, and then from an official standpoint for us.
Well, first I thought it was a horrible call, horrible non-call.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question in my mind that was pass interference.
Yep.
The defender, you could go through what is pass interference. The defender, sometimes they cut a guy slack in a play like that. If at the last second the defender turns and says he's looking for the ball, but he's banging into the receiver. Sometimes he turned, but he didn't do that.
Face mask was in his chest.
He just didn't do that. And then there was not one guy, there was 2. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I would like to, I'll bet anything that this week, and however they do that, we're going to read somewhere or hear somewhere that, the legal office will say, they made a mistake. That should have been pass interference. And I was talking to Slickhawk earlier, although I was known to have a little bit of a temper with officials.
Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah.
No.
On this thing. All right, we'll take a moment of silence. No, but it's inexcusable. And then the idea that they come back, on Tuesday and say we're sorry.
Yeah.
I would rather them not say anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it just killed me. Killed me.
Well, I said earlier, I mean, usually the defense is, the play explodes on you. The play happens fast. That's a lofted ball. You got plenty of time to get in position. To me, I would expect a youth official on a Saturday morning officiating 9-year-olds to get that call right. But
it's hard to imagine. Because. And then the closest official isn't the only one that can throw the flag.
Right, the back judge.
There's a back judge. There's a line, and it's in the corner.
Do you think it may have been because it was kind of, what do you call them, Hugh, when Russell's kind of scrambling around? You don't call them broken plays. You call them
there's scattered plays.
Scattered. It was a kind of a scattered play. He's trying to escape. He's just kind of chucking it up. And Jimmy Graham's kind of going up. He's blanket coverage. Maybe because they'd feel like this is a bailout, man. 3rd down, Russell barely gets it off. Jimmy's, trying to go up. It's kind of high. So put all those things together, and they're kind of bailing them out a little bit if they throw the flag there.
Maybe
not to defend the refs, because I don't want to defend the refs, but I'm just.
Well, when the quarterback breaks the pocket, now that receiver can get hit
right.
when he breaks the pocket. But once the ball's in the air, then the rules apply.
Right.
Regardless of how it's thrown, what the quarterback has done, and it was clearly pass interference. Yeah. It was clear. If they come out and trying to defend that, saying something, then they've changed the rules.
Yeah.
Since I was coaching.
Well, it's clearly catchable. I mean, it barely bounced out of bounds. Just redirect you real quick. I agree with you on the block in the back. I think I call that, but the objection you may hear, just so you can quickly respond to it, is Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to catch Naz Jones. Now, is it about the 40-yard line that the clip took place? Respond to somebody who says it's inconsequential to the play, even though you and I agree that we call blocking the back. For somebody who doesn't agree with us, what's your response to saying, well, he wasn't going to, you'd be bailing out Aaron Rodgers, that's inconsequential blocking the back?
No, you can't say that. You can't officiate that way, I don't think.
You got a chance to catch him, right?
Yeah. I don't think you know what? I don't know if the officials, that's going through his mind real quick, because the interception takes place. The guy's running. Now the officials are looking behind the play.
Yeah.
They're looking behind that play. They don't really know if the guy fell down sometimes. They don't know the runner. They don't know what's happening. They're looking behind the play, and there's a block in the back. I don't think they process. There's that guy who got hit. Is he capable of catching? I don't think they do that. I don't think they do that. Yeah. They just said, that's too hard to do. I don't want officials.
What if it was 50 yards? Okay.
I don't want officials thinking like that. Don't think that if it was reversed, and I'd go, hey, call it. If my guy gets hit in the back, call it.
The reason I ask that is because I've seen, in my mind's eye, I can recall lots of clips on returns, the quarterback or whatever, but it's 30 yards behind the play. The guy's about to go in the end zone, and the officials, they just, by my way of interpreting, they just think, well, yeah, that's a block in the back, but it wasn't consequential to the play whatsoever. And so maybe in my prior way of thinking, until you just made that comment, I would not have agreed with that, Mike. I would have thought that they do run that. You've been on competition committees. You're way more equipped to respond to that, but it seems to me, my impression has been, I've been told, for example, I know I've been told that holding is more holding the closer you are to the ball.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So blocks in the back are more egregious or more consequential the closer you are to maybe if Aaron Rodgers really in his mind has a chance to run down a defensive lineman, which would be perfectly reasonable in my mind, then it's more likely to be a block in the back than if it would have been, 50 yards behind the play with no chance.
I think a foul, in that case, a foul's a foul.
Okay.
You're right about holding. Say you run an off-tackle play to the right.
Yep.
We talked about this a lot on the competition committee. Now, I haven't been on there in a while, and maybe they've changed the emphasis, but the point of emphasis was this. You run a running play to the right, your left tackle gets a little jersey on the defense,
Yeah.
They're less likely to call that. You're going to call it at the point of attack.
Correct.
That allowed the runner to gain yards.
Yep.
The same thing. You're on the 5-yard line. You throw a quick fly to the flanker on the right side.
Yep.
Fade route on the right side. On the left side,
the corner's holding.
The corner's holding. The official is taught. You see the hold. You look back, if the quarterback still has the ball in his hand, it's a foul. You see the hold, you look back at the quarterback, the ball has been released, it's no foul. So they have these rules
discretion
about that. I don't think they have the rule, Hugh, as an example. Let's just say it happened. And over on the other side, some guy takes a cheap shot. Takes a cheap shot and bangs some guy. It has nothing to do with the play. Takes a cheap shot. He's going to get a foul. That's going to be a foul.
But that's in the category of, unsportsmanlike conduct.
Okay,
yeah.
Blocks him in the back.
Yeah.
On the other side.
You still think if 50 yards from the ball, he's going to get a clip?
Well, 50, that'd be an exaggeration.
You're getting into that gray area.
Yeah. But I don't think they think about that too much.
Okay.
We've talked about the poor officiating. We've talked about the mental mistakes. The third element that we started the show with was the poor offense. And we're going to do that when we come back, particularly on the offensive line, where we have gone in 12 seasons from when Mike Holmgren led an offensive line to the Super Bowl that had Walter Jones at left tackle and Steve Hutchinson at left guard. We have graduated to Reese Odiombo at left tackle and Luke Jokel at left guard. And that is like graduating from Ken Griffey Jr. to Dustin Ackley in center field. That is like graduating from Jack Sikma to Robert Swift in the post for the Seattle Supersonics. We are going to break down that offensive line and see what type of dire straits we are in
from a coach that actually knows what a good offensive line is supposed to look like. Next on 950 KJR. Half hour left of the big show with the big show, Mike Holmgren and Hugh Breedlove Millen. Before we pass it over to Chuck and Puck at 10 o'clock, I feel like we've been here for 3.5 hours and we've just literally scratched the surface on breaking this game down. So it will continue tomorrow. There's no question about that at all. But we only have Coach here for the next half hour. The offensive line coach, we knew it was going to be an issue. We did not know how big of an issue. We were hoping and praying it wouldn't look like it did yesterday, but that was Lambeau Field. That was the first game, and we have seen this team look much worse in September offensively than they normally do in November and December. So I think people that are just eyeballing this game and projecting it out, this is exactly how every game is going to look from here on out. You got to be smarter than that, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think history has shown that they have started slow last year against Miami. If you remember, yes. I think it was 9-6 or 9-3.
That was it was 12-10 against Miami, and then 9-6 in the second game of the season against the Rams.
Yeah.
They only put up 18 points in their first 2 games of the year last year combined.
Yeah, and they started, if you remember, both those teams had good defensive lines.
Yeah.
And so the strength of the other team, the opponent, matched up well with what the Seahawks were trying to do up front in building that offensive line. Same thing kind of happened yesterday, in my opinion. You got an offensive line that's building and will be better at the end of the year than they were yesterday, in my opinion. And then they went against a good defensive line. I thought yesterday that the bright spot for the offensive line was the right tackle, who dealt with Clay Matthews a fair amount and did a decent job, in my opinion. He was okay. Fetty.
Yeah.
And Britt's going to be solid all year. But the two guard position and the left tackle, and that's look at you. The offensive line. You always talk about continuity and them playing as a unit and helping each other and all that kind of stuff to be sound. And yesterday, early on, if you remember, Russell got sacked early on.
The first drive.
Yeah, the linebacker from Green Bay. Forget his name right now, but he ran right over the left tackle, knocked him back, sacked Russell, and then it happened. Then they missed a couple things inside. Their guards just whiffed, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, boy, this is going to be, if he holds the ball too long.
You talk about Nick Perry when
Nick Perry. I'm sorry.
Him up,
Thanks you. Yeah, it was Nick Perry, and then but you're right, Dick. The sky is falling. The sky is falling. It's one game. It's the opener. Openers are tough because you don't have the book on the other team.
Mm-hmm.
They will be better. The offensive line will get better, but yesterday they had a tough day.
You were talking about Fetty. You and I might differ a little bit on this one. There was sack. There's pressures there. I think beyond the stat sheet, Mike, for me, he gives up so much ground so quick in his, it looks like after that first preseason game when he gave up the inside penetration, he's so determined to not allow that B gap, the inside, that he just opens the gate, and he's retreating so deep, so fast, that it causes, for Russell, there's a certain, that's very unsettling when, as when that guy's getting pushed back so far, so fast, and it takes away some of his exit angles when he gets pressure from otherwise. I don't know. I would like to see a Fetty just be a little bit stouter at the line. Take on the combat, a little closer to the line of scrimmage. He's way too deep for my liking.
Yeah, well, he's a big, strong guy. And I think what'll help the line is if they can get the running game going a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's their philosophy. That's what they want to do. And they couldn't do it yesterday. Now, is it the offensive line? Is it the backs? Is it a combination of things?
What do you see with the backs?
Well, it seems to me they're not quite sure who the back should be. Now, maybe it's Rawls, and he can't play because he's hurt. But,
that was their plan.
Yeah, Lacey had 5 carries yesterday for 3 yards. Proside carried the ball a couple times.
Coach Lacey looks like a slug. I mean, there is no explosion. There is no lateral. I mean, I was asking Hugh off the air,
Is there a running back? Now, I'm not talking about fullback. Is there a running back in the NFL that has less of an ability to go around the edge than Eddie Lacy does? I mean, there's just no explosion there.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen him enough to answer that question. But if in fact, they made the trade, he got his weight down, I guess, the way it was supposed to be. And I think there was some feeling like he might be the guy to come in and take the spot. And he did some things in the preseason. But yesterday, if you notice, when they handed the ball off, it seemed to me, I haven't looked at the film, but it seemed to me yesterday that the Green Bay had a lot of penetration. No one could pop anywhere. There's a lot of green jerseys around, and just
a lot of clutter back there.
It didn't seem like there was a hat on a hat offense versus defense.
Sure.
At least
he got no help. I'm not going to bury him forever because he got no help yesterday.
Get a hat on a hat. Get it. And maybe you're not driving somebody off the ball 5 yards, but at least you got little cracks and little. Montgomery, flip it the other way. The Packer back Montgomery, he didn't bust loose most of the time, but he got a crack and he gained 4, and then he gains 3, and then he gains,
instead
that kind of
minus
stuff.
2.
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
and then Earl would smack him. But going back to Eddie Lacy, a couple thoughts that I have about him. Maybe you can reply. First of all, I look. You take Google images. You say Eddie Lacy, Alabama. And then you click the image. You can see 150 images of him. What his body looked like when he was in college. Now I understand. It's not atypical for a professional athlete to gain a little weight through his pro career, right? You've seen that. But while they talk about him being at 250 when he had been at 231 coming out of college, and they say, hey, we're happy to have him at 250. That's in my mind. I think they're saying that, well, we can't have him at 270, so we'll take him at 250. But that's still not his ideal. His ideal, in my mind, is 240 or less, high 230s. If we're talking about him being a totally responsible professional athlete, think of the hardest working guys, most committed guys you've ever coached, Jerry Rice and on down at every position you could name them. Guys that say, no, I'm going to be at my optimum. I'm going to be within no more than 2 pounds from my optimum my entire career. That to me is about 238. It's not 250. And so you've got that, and then you got 2.8, 2.9 million guaranteed to him. And so he looks like a guy that, absent of that factor, I'd be wondering whether or not they're going to cut him midseason. Mm-hmm. Now I'm jumping the gun, but the 250 thing that the Seahawks talk about, that's kind of like almost like your withdrawal. Like I know I can't get my kid to clean up his room entirely and make his bed, but if I can just get him to get the banana peels off the floor, I'll take it. I don't know, Mike. What do you think in terms of kind of just the Lacy dilemma with respects to a couple of these aspects?
Well, I think you're exactly right. If he was so big, though, I think he was so big that they just to give him some incentive to continue to lose weight and to see if it works, get him to 250. If it's not working, and we're seeing some things, they obviously are seeing whatever they see. They're with him every day. Then they got to keep working to get him down to a level where he can be effective. I think the bigger picture is the running back position itself. If you're not going to use a fullback to block and run the power,
they don't have
like
a fullback. That's the problem.
Yeah, and if you're not going to do that, then who is the running back if Rawls is hurt? Now everyone likes Carson, but he was a 7th round pick. I know Pete. It's been broadcast that Pete, that was his pick. He really likes him, and he showed some stuff yesterday. Popped one, and so decide. The young guys that they have, pro side and so on, they're kind of multi-purpose guys.
When do you decide?
You hand the ball to him
When do you decide? How long of a leash you give Eddie Lacy?
You got to decide here. You got to decide soon, in my opinion. To me, that decision was made in the preseason. To me, now look at. Everyone does their own thing, That's why Baskin Robbins has 31 flavors. Mm-hmm. But you if they're comfortable with kind of seeing how it works early in the preseason, And you know why they're comfortable with that? Because their defense is so good. No, we're going to win games 17-10, 17-6, 14-3. We're going to win games that way.
Well, that's how they're going to win next
Yeah, but
week.
most teams can't do that. Most teams can't do that. So you got to you got to figure out this stuff and get some stuff going.
I know, Hugh, I know you got more stuff for him. We're going to take a quick timeout, come back with the final segment. We'll get to Hugh's question. I also want to ask Coach about scheming to help the offensive line produce. What can you do? What the Seahawks tried to do yesterday, bringing guys in, bringing fullbacks into block, bringing running backs into block, bringing tight ends into block, bringing everybody into block and not sending anybody else on pass routes, versus going the other way, putting more wide receivers out there, sprinting Russell out, bootlegs, quick hitters, what have you. We're going to see what Coach Holmgren would do to help his offensive line so the Seahawks can actually move the football. We'll do that in the final segment next on 950 KJR. Final segment with Coach Holmgren. He'll be back with us on Friday at on the phone to preview another one of his former teams, the San Francisco 49ers, who should not pose as big a problem as the Green Bay Packers did. If game one for the 49ers was any indication at all, which was an absolute disaster for them. It was a disaster for two of those teams in the NFC West, the Cardinals and the 49ers. That's a rough way to start the season for those two. You think the Seahawks were bad.
I know. And you know what's interesting, because in the division, and then the Rams. the Rams just
pummeled.
The
Colts. Wow.
And you know what? Goff, who I was kind of champing last year, who had a rough year last year.
He did.
But he had a really good game. Really threw the ball. And that's, I was kind of happy for the young man. He's a good guy. But yeah, the 49ers had a tough day. That division, Arizona now, they're
lost their running back.
Yeah, really? Boy, that's a tough one.
Oh. It is. Coach, the scheme, what can you do? Put your shoes in the head coach of the Seahawks position once again. Scheme-wise, in-game, what can you do when it's just obviously not working up front for you? I was a little bit surprised we didn't see more rollouts, move in the pocket, bootlegs, quick hitters, put 5 wide receivers out there and just take a 2-step drop and get it out of your hand. We really didn't see much of that at all. Instead, they went the other way, tried to bring everybody in to try to max protect and block and send 2 or 3 receivers out in a pattern.
Yeah, you said it earlier, Dick. What do you bunch when you have protection problems or fears? How do you handle that? Do you bring people in? Do you chip with the backs? Do you bring an extra tight end in? How do you do that? That's one way to look at it. If you do that, now you take away from your passing game, obviously, because you don't have that many weapons. The other way to do that, the other way to handle if you fear protection problems, is to do what you said. You roll out, you sprint out, you move the pocket, or if he's going to drop back, you have timing routes where you're going to go bang, bang. You're not necessarily going down the field. Now, Russell has shown the ability to do that. And I'm kind of, I've said this over and over again. People are tired of me saying it, but he's capable of doing those things. Give him the ball a little bit more on things like that if you're worried about protection. What they have to decide, first of all, they can't panic. Don't panic. Game one, you can have a bad, however they view this, you can have a bad game. This area didn't work so well. Don't panic. But philosophically, how are we going to go forward? I know what we'd like to do. I know in a perfect world what we'd like to do. We'd like to play great defense, which we know. We'd like to kick the ball well. We want to pound them with the running game, and then Russell just does his thing. That's what we'd like to do. What can we do? And you have to be very honest in those meetings. You have to be very honest in those meetings, and I've said this before. Your line coach comes up to me and says, okay, we're going to do this, this, this. And then in my heart, I go, I don't think we can do that. I don't think he can block. I don't think he can do that. Mm-hmm. Yes, he can. Then the head coach has to make a decision. So, but the beauty of it is don't panic. Get the running game going, because that's a big part. But if you don't think we're quite there yet, then figure out things for Russell to do. Yeah. Get him throwing, because he can do that.
I think you have to, in my way of thinking, down and distance is a big part of this discussion, because you can run the nakeds where you're having him roll out away from the flow of the running game. But on 3rd and 12, you're not going to get anything out of a naked. You're not going to get the flow that you want. The Seahawks yesterday 25% on 3rd down. Those 3rd down and longs, you give yourself a chance when a tight end and a running back, Mike, are blocking when it's obviously just a 4-man rush. There's no threat of a blitz. They're backed off. And it's a real statement that, wow, we really don't trust those tackles, right? That we're gonna chip and get those guys in as late checkdowns, right? So that's a little bit of a problem. You're not going to get the stretch. Give yourself the best chance. And then the other quick thing, Dick, and Mike, maybe your thought on it. The sprint out, you got 2 potential problems. First of all, you're not guaranteed to get the edge. If the end goes way up the field, that can gum things up on the sprint out in terms of just getting outside of the pocket. And then the other part of it is, of course, you're cutting off half the field. You're only throwing to the quarterback side that he's running to, and they have to be out breaking routes. So if you're a defender and you sense sprint out,
you can shade
you
out.
know that the guy's not going to be running an in route towards the middle of the field. He's going to throw across his body. It's going to be if he's starting to stop, it's going to be an out-breaking route. So it kind of cuts down what you can do schematically.
The one thing I think we should think about too is, I think you're absolutely right on that as far as sprint outs go. But mix it up. You don't have to if throw one in there, just so they know he's not a marked man in the pocket on a spot.
Right.
You can move those things. But they made so much last year when he was hurt about how much that affected the running game because you took away his ability in the read zone to run. I didn't see that yesterday. Did he? I don't think there was a couple plays where he handed the ball off
and he faked.
And he faked. I thought he had the ball. I said, "Whoa!" But he'd handed the ball off. Mm-hmm. I don't think he kept the ball on a read zone yesterday. Am I?
Nope,
he didn't. So, and they said that's a big part of how we're going to be better in the running game this year as opposed to last year. So
but you got to respect that handoff. If you don't respect the handoff, then the read zone's not going to work, right?
Yeah, but the point is, if something has to work a little in that play, you're not going to gain 50 yards on the run. But if they're taking the other part away from Russell, then they should have a blocking scheme in there that gets you some yards on the handoff. But the thing is, I think they're worried. I think that they don't want him getting hurt. They realize what happened last year when he was hurt.
Yep.
So maybe it's not quite the weapon, the read zone, as it's been in years past.
Coach, always a pleasure. We'll talk to you on Friday.
Okay, Dick. Good.
All right, sounds good.
Thank
9:55 on 950 KJR. Thanks to Hugh Millen as well. Chuck and Puck will continue the Seahawk conversation next on 950 KJR.